Okay, so I guess we're all here, huh? Sorry we're late. So can we get a roll call? So who do we have here today? We have HPC and DRC. So can we get a roll call for DRC first for December 14th, please?
Member Annelman?
Here.
Member Dunn?
Here.
Acting Chair Klein?
Ooh, that's cool. Here. Do you want to?
Sure. Okay, so can we have a roll call for HPC, please?
Member Houston?
Here.
Member Mercer?
Here.
Member Schaefer?
Here.
Vice Chair Klein?
Here.
Chair Huckins?
Here.
Thank you. We'll do a quick public communication. If anyone would like to speak on an item that's not on the agenda tonight, this is time that's set aside for that. I don't see any speaker cards that speak to that, so I guess we'll move on. And do we need a quick staff update? You want to do that now, Jeff?
Sure. I'll be brief, just because you're all gathered here together. I think it's important to give you an update on the fire that we've all been experiencing since Monday night, December 4th. Just so you know, I think you all know, we were all at a city council meeting that night when we got word that there was a fire in Santa Paula at about 6:20, and by 7:30 it was 1,000 acres and headed our way. We opened the Emergency Operations Center by 9 o'clock, and by 10 o'clock we established a disaster declaration. So it was a pretty much of a whirlwind night, and for the first 48 hours or so it was 24/7. I first want to make a comment that I think the city team across the organization did an excellent job trying to be prepared and jump onto this thing, from the firefighters to everybody else in City Hall that moved to the EOC to operate our response. Many of the people that work for me that are sitting in this room were part of that response. So if they look a little red-eyed, you'll know that why. I think it's also important to you all know that the city and county immediately worked together and have been working side by side ever since, as well as the other cities in the incident. A couple of factoids for you, just in case you haven't seen the latest. We're now at about 243,000 acres burned. Probably the fourth largest at the moment fire in the state of California's history, and it's still growing. You might know today it's continued to expand into Fillmore, and it's continuing to expand into Santa Barbara. We have about 7,000 to 8,000 firemen in town helping us on this fire. If you haven't been by the fairgrounds, don't, because traffic is terrible, but that's their ground zero for the command center, and it's pretty impressive, the amount of people that have come from all over the state. Unfortunately, until today, we had no firearm injuries or deaths. We lost a fireman today, this many days into the fire. But so far, we've been a pretty injury-free experience. So far, we think the cost of fighting this fire is about $75 million and growing every moment. And we're making ourselves prepared for not only the fighting of the fire, but the recovery. As our fire chief says, it's been his job since December 4th, and it soon will become my job to go forward with the recovery. So we're actually in the process of pivoting to recovery. It's pretty stable in Ventura at the moment. A couple of things that are important for you to know. We opened yesterday the local assistance center at the Poinsettia Pavilion. So if you know anybody that's been impacted and has not been there yet, encourage them to be there. It's all the county agencies, the city, several other agencies are there, including the state. Really one-stop shop for people to find out what's going on and what they do next. That's really critical. Number two, we continue to release the evacuation. As late as yesterday, we released Skyline and Hidden Valley. We expect that we will continue to complete the release of the evacuation areas left over the next several days. No guarantees, and if we're not able to release the last communities by this weekend, we will do more of escorting people up into their neighborhood if we don't release the evacuation by then. Clearly, that's been an important step, is to allow people back into the community to see what they lost or to get back in their homes. We're working closely with Edison and the gas company to make sure that when they get into their homes, they have power and water service so they can begin to recover individually. The next step for us is really going to be debris removal. That's a very important part of this process. It's a two-step process actually being run by the county. environmental services. So the first step is they have contracted with the Department of Toxic Substance Control at the state. They will be in charge of the hazardous household waste removal. They will be mobilizing here in the city on Monday, this coming Monday the 18th, and begin to assess the work they have ahead and begin the process of removing household hazardous waste from all the debris sites. That will be a requirement for those property owners that they let that happen. We're under a health emergency by the county, so that gives us that authority to do that. The second phase, once that's been cleared, is the overall debris. This will not be a requirement, but strongly encouraged that homeowners use what's called Cal Recycle, which the county is negotiating a deal with now, where Cal Recycle will come in and remove all the debris, including the foundations, if they're determined to not be really sound and ready to be used for new construction. Cal Recycle tells us, in their experience, in most cases after a fire, the foundations, especially the age of these foundations, won't be eligible, but we'll see how that plays out. So that's going to start happening, and we're told that Cal Recycle will be mobilized by the third week in January, begin to do that work as well. I think that's really important. One thing that my staff have been working on very hard over the last last week or so is really getting ahead of the information that the property owners need to rebuild. So we are gathering all of our property documents that by site, and by Monday we will have available to each of the 500 homes and those that were lost are complete records that we have for their property. We hope to send an email out tomorrow that lets them know it's available. Come to the local assistance center at the Poinsettia Pavilion, and we will give them what we have. To the extent that we have plans, and we don't have a lot of the plans, we think we have 10 to 20% of the actual archived plans. We will make them available as well. We will be sending a letter out tomorrow to all the architects of those plans and giving them 7 days to object to us releasing their plans, and we assume most won't reject, and we'll get that out to those homeowners and begin the process. As we pivot to rebuilding, we will be going to council in January with additional resources so that we can keep up with the work effort. You all know how busy we are already, so we're going to be adding resources so we can create a separate office just for those homeowners that are rebuilding, so give them targeted, sort of specialized attention and go through that process and ask for council resources. We'll also be looking at our policies and regulations to see if there's anything there that we could do that would help that rebuild, and go into council with some recommendations. Even things like we don't allow RVs to be parked on vacant properties. Maybe we allow people to bring an RV and park on their property and be connected to their property while they go through the process, and that's happening as well. I will strongly encourage you to, if you talk to people, tell them to go to VenturaCountyRecovers.org. It's our website that's being created by the county and all the jurisdictions affected by this fire. We'll continue to populate information, a one-stop where people can go and learn what's happening, get regular updates. If you want to see what that's going to look like when it's complete, unfortunately, we're not the only city that has experienced this. Go to SonomaCountyRecovers.org. It will look a lot like that. As a note, just to talk about how cities help each other, on Tuesday, the day after the fire started, the city manager from Santa Rosa called and said, I'm on my way down, and spent the week with us last week, helping us understand what we need to do, what he's learned from his experience in Santa Rosa, which was invaluable and really helpful. Unfortunately, we're going to have that opportunity at some point to do that for somebody else in the future. And then finally, and I'm happy to answer questions if you have any, I want to talk about sort of the support we've received from the professional community in this town. I know I've talked to Tyson a lot. There's architect after architect, contractor after contractor has called and said, what can I do to help? And I know many of them are getting organized to really help as a profession, help the city and our community rebuild. And I think that's really something we should be proud of. And with that, I'll end the update and happy to answer any questions if I missed something critical to you.
Thank
Otherwise,
you,
we
Jeff.
can move on.
Any questions? Probably not relevant right now, but we appreciate everything you're doing. I know it's a tough job. And I will just reiterate, there is kind of a professional group that's working, a lot of the people in this room right now, to help in that process. So that will be plugging in at a later date. Anyone else on that subject? Very touchy subject? No? Okay, so then maybe we just get on, because we got a huge agenda in front of us. So with that, I'm going to toss it over to you so that we can get going on HPC items.
Okay, so item number 1, excuse me, is approval of the Historic Preservation Committee it says 2017 meeting calendar. I think it means 2018 meeting calendar. Would anyone like to make a motion or have anything they'd like to say about the proposed calendar?
Is there a staff?
I'll make a motion to accept.
Ian, you have something to say? Oh, okay.
I'd second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item number 2 is approval of the joint DRC, HPC, and PC minutes from October 18th, 2017. So HPC, does anyone have any amendments or comments on the minutes, or would they like to make a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And also, item number 2 is the approval of the October 25, 2017 HPC meeting minutes. Would anyone like to comment on them, amend them, or make a motion to approve?
You're just doing the, you're.
I'm just doing HPC.
Okay, cool.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second? Second. In favor?
Aye.
I can't get the slide thing. Okay, so on the DRC side, we have October 18th. Can I get a motion of approval or any comments on that?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Next is October 25th.
No, you don't have those. That's just HPC, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's just 18th. So don't do anything there. Okay, so with that, I'll toss back because I think HBC's lead on 3.
Okay, so item number 3 is project number 4428, a formal historic resources assessment, formal design review, and minor change to review a focused phase 2 historical resources assessment related to additions of new windows, door, and storefront systems for the adaptive reuse of an existing commercial building previously determined to be eligible for historic landmark status located at the Pacific View Mall property, number 3350 Telegraph Road. And our staff person is Elizabeth? Okay.
Let's see if this works. Can you hear me? I can hear myself. So tonight we're going to be reviewing the Barker Brothers building. This is a joint DRC HPC project. This is for the adaptive reuse of the Barker Brothers building for a new gym. This is the project. We're located in the Commerce General Plan land use, and then we're also located in the intermediate commercial zone. So it is zone commercial, appropriate for the health and fitness use. This is the site as it's located within the mall. See if my pointer works. This is Main Street. This is Mills and Telegraph. This is the bus to home or bus transfer station, and then this is the Barker Brothers building. Trader Joe's and Staples are located here, along with Bevmo. Just another photo of the site. In this picture, you can see the roof cuts that the fire department used the building for training, and then just some more pictures of the building. This is the facade that the historic Phase 1 and Phase 2 reports that have previously been done on the project have identified as the historic frontage. The focused Phase 2 has also reviewed the project for historic compatibility with the adaptive reuse of the project. So this is the north facade of the building. This faces Telegraph Road. This is the south facade of the building that faces the Target building. So the project is for the review of the focused Phase 2, historical resources assessment, and that's for the adaptive reuse of the existing commercial building. There's going to be structural upgrades to the building. They're going to replace windows and doors. They're going to add new windows and door openings, new paint, and new landscaping. Background, the mall was originally developed in 1964. In 1996 was when a CUP was approved for the Pacific View Mall, and that's when the mall went through a major upgrade. In August of 2012, we did the historic Phase 1, and in November of 2015, we did the historic Phase 2. At the time, the mall was looking to demolish the building, and the historic Phase 2 came back and said that in order to demolish the building, an EIR would be required. And they have since the mall and the tenant have determined that the building could be reused, and therefore we did the focused Phase 2 to study what those upgrades would mean for the building. So the report reviewed the proposed project against the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation. There's 10 standards. The first one is that the property used will make minimal changes to the materials, to the historic structure, and the consultant studied the building and determined that the way that they've designed the project with the new window and door openings following the mortar joints of the block, that's not altering the overall composition of appearance, as well as the new storefront systems that they're proposing. Standard number two, this is that the historic character of the building will be preserved. And again, the new windows on the west facade, they will be sized to fit the existing masonry units. Those are the concrete blocks. The blocks will not be cut in themselves. They're going to be cutting them along the grout lines, so respecting the masonry of the building. And then the additional egress doors, windows, stair ramps will be limited to the secondary facade, and that will become the primary facade of the building, and that's the side of the building that faces onto Target. Standard number three. This has to do with that I believe this has to do with the property recognizes its place in time, and this property will actually not be altering or adding features from other historical properties. So they're respecting the building as it is. Standard number four is that the changes of the property items of the building that have their own significance will be retained, and the project does not propose to remove or alter any elements that are significant on their own. That would be similar to that large entry piece on the north elevation. Standard 5, distinctive materials. The project will retain and preserve. There's cement, plaster, and mosaic tile finishes on the building that will be preserved. There's a precast concrete piers in the portico on the north elevation. Those will be preserved. And then the split-face concrete block walls and then the raised planters that we see on the west elevation, those will be preserved. Number 6, this is again related to historic features, which they're not proposing to remove. Number 7, chemical treatment. They're not proposing to do chemical or physical treatments to the building. Number 8, archaeological resources. If they essentially, if they find them, they're going to go through the proper channels to identify and document in consultation with a qualified archaeologist. Number 9, about if the new additions and the new construction, will they destroy the historic materials? What the mall and the new tenants architects, they are respecting and retaining the majority of the historic character defining features of this building with their adaptive reuse. And then number 10, if there are additions or any construction that will not respect the building, I believe. Ultimately, the Barker Brothers building, they're going to alter the building, but they're going to respect the building for what it is, for their adaptive reuse of the building. Reviewing it for historic designation criteria, events. The building, Barker Brothers, represents post-World War II. It's an important building related to the regional commercial growth of the 1960s, along with the construction of the US 101. Lives and persons, none were noted. Exemplary particular period of national, state, or local history. Barker Brothers building reflects post-war. Residential commercial growth in the Southern California area. And it's also a mid-century modern building. And then for the rest of them, master builders, none were identified. Significant distinguished components that none were identified. Yielding information important to national, state, or local prehistory, none were identified. For the integrity, location, the building was constructed in '64. The architect was Louis Mazzetti Leach. The builders were Monitor Construction Company. I believe they're out of Santa Barbara. The building is associated with a pattern of World War II. The builder and the architect were not identified as master builders on our list. The design of the building is mid-century, retains, and then what they're proposing to do will retain the character-defining features of the building. And then for events, it represents post-war development in Ventura. And no evidence that the previous owners had a meaningful contribution to local history. The project is consistent with the general plan. It's a commercial use. You're reusing a commercial building. C1A does allow the use by right. So for the site plan, the existing building will be reused, and they're adding a new ADA ramp with trash enclosures. Bicycle parking is provided on the southwest portion, and then parking is located in the southern and western parking lots. So this is the site plan for Barker Brothers, or for the 24-hour fitness. This is Telegraph Road. So this is the historic entrance here. They are moving the entrance to the side that faces Target. So they're going to be able to utilize this parking lot with their ADA ramp into the building, and then have additional parking over here. New landscaping. They are proposing new landscaping within the concrete block planter boxes. That would include Catalina ironwood, as well as a variety of shrubs. Just as a note, there were ficus trees that were planted in these planters previously. In the last year's rain and wind, one tree was lost, fell over, and a minor change was approved to remove the rest of the ficus trees. And the purpose behind that is that the arborist report that came out, essentially the box that these large ficus trees are planted in were not sized correctly for those trees, and ultimately the root system failed, causing the trees to fall over. So a minor change was approved, and then their landscaping that they're proposing is part of this application. And then these are the locations of those planter boxes. The parking. So the Pacific View Mall is a large shopping center. They're required to park their mall at 1 to 300. The mall overall is 1 million square feet. So they're required to provide 3,480 parking spaces. They're providing 4,700, which is ultimately they're overparked, which is fine. They are, as the mall is, they're required to provide 348 parking spaces. This is a project condition for staff and the property owner to study. 24-hour fitness will be providing 8 parking spaces for their use. On the elevations, on the north elevation, a new storefront system will be added. Spandrel glass will be on the ground floor. Vision glass will be on the second floor. There will also be a new exit door, and then as well as a new man door on the eastern edge of the elevation. This would be on the Staples side. On the west elevation, they are proposing 5 new windows, 2 on the ground floor, 3 on the upper floors, and then on the south elevation, they're proposing a new storefront system, as well as filling in the existing roll-up door on the eastern side on the eastern end of that facade. New paint colors are also proposed. Primary wall will be Sands of Time. Trim will become Portobello, and accent colors will be Bittersweet. These are sort of in the brown tan family. This is the rendering of the north elevation. You can see the new man door here on the eastern elevation, and this is the new storefront system with the new door here. This is the eastern elevation, southern elevation. New storefront system, new ADA ramp, filling in the roll-up door, new man door. The bicycle parking is also proposed in this location, as well as the new planter beds. One thing to note on the elevations is that you can see the gray boxes of the mechanical equipment. The applicant team has worked on creating site distancing to show that when you're on the ground, standing as on the pedestrian scale, those won't be visible. And the project is also conditioned to study that further with the architect team to ensure that there is no rooftop mechanical equipment that's going to be visible. And then this is the western elevation. These are the new windows that are being proposed that are following the cut, the grout lines of the block, as recommended by the consultant. 1997 design guidelines, the project does comply with those. Conditions of approval, we are including the original or the 1996 Planning Commission and City Council resolutions, as well as condition number 32, which is the rooftop equipment screening, and the number 35 for the studying of the bicycle parking. There was an errata memo, and there are some modifications to the conditions related to water. Condition number 43, they're generally the wording of the conditions, but we're recommending that condition number 43 be struck and replaced with the language regarding net zero. Condition number 44, strike and replace it with language related to fire department separate service lines for the fire protection purposes. I've lost my clicker. Wasn't that awesome? 44. That's so weird. On condition number 45, we're striking. It's language related to planting of trees until the water lines have been found, and then there's just some tweaks to the language, I believe, and then we're adding condition number 46 related to planting trees until the sewer laterals have been found, and then locating them so that there's 10 feet away from the sewer laterals. Technical review, building safety, complying with green building code, and a CAS specialist is recommended, and it's categorically exempt from CEQA. Next steps will be City Council call for review, plan check, and design review compliance inspection. And staff's recommendation is for HPC to make a recommendation by minute motion to the DRC to approve the project based upon the proposed project design, and then for the design review committee to approve the design review permit and minor change subject to the conditions. And I'm all done.
Jeff? Yes.
I just want to add, thanks Elizabeth for the presentation. I think it's fair to say that this has been a joint effort between the city and Macerich to try to get to a point where this building gets to be reused and honored, and I want to give Macerich a little credit here, not just because they're in the room, because they've really stepped up to try to figure out a way to adaptively reuse a building that we all know has been sitting vacant for a very long time. So I just wanted to make that note before we conclude staff's presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. So really, I think it's HPC. Do we want to have a joint conversation, or you're actually looking for HPC to move first, it sounds like?
My applicant also has his presentation, if you
Okay.
want
I'm
to
just asking-
review
I'm just asking
anything.
for
But generally, when it's joint, HPC does their deliberations, and then DRC does their deliberations.
Okay, so with that being said, I only have one speaker card, so I don't think this is the applicant, but if the applicant has a presentation, we'd love to hear that now. Any questions of staff before that applicant comes up?
I actually have a question for staff. On the west secondary facade, it appears that there's some sort of lighting fixtures that are there now. What's the story with those in the proposal?
I believe they're being removed as part of this application because of the window, the new window placement. The elevations don't show them being on the building anymore.
Maybe we can ask the applicant.
I was going to say you can ask the applicant.
So with that, if the applicant can come on up, and I don't have any speaker cards for applicants, so just when you're done, maybe just fill out a speaker card for us. That would be great. When you're done, it's fine. Your name and thumbprint's fine for now.
Representing Macerich, I have with me Ilmar Calvisti, property manager for Macerich, and Mike Reuter from McKenzie, the architects working on this project for 24-hour fitness. So do we have a clicker or just? There you go. Okay. So start off, Elizabeth went over a couple of details on our presentation on the site plan. So minor modification on the site plan, as you can see. We're proposing 8 new bicycle parking on the southwest elevation, as well as a new trash enclosure dedicated to 24-hour fitness. We're also replacing some of the landscaping, but the design and features of the landscapers itself are remaining. And we're also adding an ADA accessible ramp. For the landscape plan, we're proposing 4 Catalina ironwood trees to replace the ficus trees that were removed a couple months ago. To complement the landscaping of the Catalina ironwood trees, we're proposing the blue fescue, wild rye, heavenly bamboo, firework grass, and sugar bush plants. This image on the existing building, as you can note, the image on the top is an image from the 1970s, and the image on the bottom was an image from Google Earth taken a week ago. As you can notice, in the north elevation of the building on the top image, you can see that there used to be a parking lot serving the old Barker Bros building. That was the old entrance, main entrance to the building. And now you can see on the bottom image the new bus station and new revamped parking lot on the south elevation.
And so then from the building design, we with working with staff, we realized right away that there was a strong desire to maintain those mid-century modern elements and to sort of retain the essence of what this building is because of the significance to Ventura. So that was the big design idea for this building. It was trying to figure out, okay, what can we do to maintain as much of the existing building as possible. Then when we got into the building, as Elizabeth mentioned, the fire department has had significant amounts of training. That's on the second floor. You can see all the holes in the roof, and there's kind of significant damage done to the interior of the building from the roof and as well as that first floor and some of the exterior walls. So the first call that I had was to our structural engineer and got him involved right off the bat, tried to do all the structural analysis. And before we even started space planning or figuring out how we were going to use this building, we knew we needed to determine how it could be done structurally. So I worked with him. We did a lot of analysis on the building, testing of all the elements, the exterior walls, the CMU, and to determine what could remain. Ultimately, we decided the exterior walls could remain, and the main structural system, the steel columns and girders, was what we were able to maintain. And then from there, the exterior walls were determined even with steel strong backing along the interior of the exterior walls. That wasn't going to provide enough lateral shear capacity for the building. We determined if we put in some new concrete shear walls internal, then we'd be able to maintain the exterior walls and keep that character. And then due to the significant deterioration, we're bringing in new roof joists and floor joists, metal deck, concrete floor on the first floor. And then that's giving us our lateral diaphragm transferring into these internal shear walls. So the major structural modifications are all happening inside, allowing us to preserve that exterior character of the building. And so I'll just move through this fairly quickly. We are adding that new window on the south side, mimicking the same proportions and configuration that is on the north side to help tell the story that this is the new entrance now on the south side. The north side, maintaining the character as much as possible on the north side. So the only thing, we'll be replacing that storefront because it's deteriorated and needs to be replaced. And we needed to add that one egress door that's on the east side of the building to meet all the code requirements from inside. But other than that, the north facade of the building is being maintained. And then the additional windows on the west side, and there we're kind of following the architectural elements that were already there. And to the comment on the lighting, There were some existing light fixtures on that west side. They are deteriorated, falling apart. They weren't functional. And actually, I don't have I probably can't see from the existing photos, especially with those trees there now. The wiring, there's just a external conduit that was run over to a couple wall packs that are over there now. So we will be replacing those wall packs, and we'll be running conduit from inside of the building. So you won't have the exposed conduit running on the exterior of the building anymore, and you'll get 2 wall packs to maintain the lighting on that facade. But those existing vertical light fixtures that were probably noticed, I'm guessing have not been functioning for a very long time. And so the color palette was mentioned, keep maintaining neutral colors and just using some accent colors to accentuate the architectural elements that were present. The new windows following those vertical elements, and the additional storefront on the south side. And then here are sightline diagrams. So this is the one from the north, from the property line. And we have dashed in there the old mechanical penthouse that's existing in the building. That's kind of the frame of reference. So you can see in the existing photo, you can see a little bit of that penthouse that will ultimately be removed. And then these smaller rooftop units scaled in there so that from the property line, those won't be seen. This is the view from the south, right in front of Target on that drive aisle. Same thing, you can see with the sightline diagram that the visibility does hit the old mechanical penthouse, but the new units are held back from the perimeter of the building enough not to be seen. And then we did 2 sightline diagrams from the west, one adjacent to the auto center, and then one all the way back from the property line. And there you can see those old vertical light fixtures, I guess, once the trees were removed. And then you can kind of make out the 2 wall packs that are in between in the second bay in from the north and south. And so ultimately we'll be left with the main floor. We'll have a daycare, an aerobic studio, the locker rooms, and the pool. And then the upper floor will be largely open for the open workout floor with a cycle studio and then some support spaces. And that's all we have, unless there's additional questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions of the applicant? And I guess we really should open up questions at both sides, DRC and HPC. So any questions of the applicant at this point? HPC? Please.
The penthouse housed the old mechanicals?
Right.
It wasn't for people?
No.
Okay. And the lighting that you said that's forthcoming to replace the existing lighting,
Yes.
what does it look like?
Kind of a standard wall pack. Won't be, I don't have cuts with me. I could certainly email them to Elizabeth. They have been identified. So
Are they going to mimic what was there?
the wall packs, no, because the wall packs that are there now are just industrial
I mean,
wall packs.
what's there now are vertical?
There's lights between them, wall packs.
Yeah, so let's see if
That's
I
what I'm
can.
asking what they look like.
So the wall packs that are functioning right now are these 2. You have one wall pack there, one wall pack there, and there's an electrical conduit coming from that light fixture coming over to serve that wall pack, and then another one coming over. Those vertical elements,
Are going to disappear?
I'm guessing, have not been used for a very, very long time. They're rusted. There aren't any bulbs in them. They're peeling apart.
The building hasn't been used in a long
So,
time.
yeah,
So the element will disappear?
yes.
Thank you.
So let me get this clear. So there will not be light fixtures replacing these 8 light fixtures?
The vertical light fixtures, no.
Okay. How many light fixtures will be there?
There'll be 2 wall packs on that west
Okay.
facade in similar areas to where they are now,
Okay.
where the wall packs are now.
I just have a couple other questions, just to clarify things. On the north facade, which is the one, of course, which is of most interest to Historic Preservation Committee. I think that's south that you're showing now, there. So the new exit door, the man door, what's the purpose of that man door?
So that is from the aerobics room that's over in that corner. The aerobics room is this area here. It requires a second exit. So it's the emergency exit.
So it's an
aerobics
emergency
room.
exit, so, okay.
Yep.
And there's no way that could be put onto the east facade? No, I guess not, no, because
Yeah,
there's
that's the Staples.
Staples. Okay, so my other question is, okay, on the west facade, you're proposing 5 windows. Somewhere in the staff report, it says 6 windows, but it definitely is 5 windows, right? And why do you want to put windows there? Just tell us why you need windows
So
there.
the 2 windows on the lower level, that'll go into the pool. Without those 2 windows on the lower level, you wouldn't have any natural light in the pool, which isn't very desirable. And then the same thing for the upper level. It's just to bring more natural light into that open workout floor.
Okay, figured that was the answer. And one other question I have, I just noticed in one of your slides on the current south facade, it appears as though the current roof line, if you have the one where there was the current photo and then your rendering, yeah, now it appears there's some kind of a dentil or a texture along the roof line now, but not in your rendering, and I just wonder why, your thoughts on that and why that might be, why you're removing that.
It's
feature.
not being removed. We just didn't.
It's just not drawn.
It didn't get to that level of detail in the rendering.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Great, thank you.
Yeah, the only thing that'll be happening up along that, there isn't any flashing over that right now, so it's starting to deteriorate, so we will put a little flashing over just to maintain it, but that's the extent of the modification.
But the current roof line will be
Maintained.
repaired
Yes.
as it needs. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Quick question. Roof access, is that internal?
Internal.
Can you tell me what the dimensions are of the planters on the west side? Where the Catalina Ironwood's going?
We don't have that information handy with us. I can definitely send it to Elizabeth so she can send it to you.
Okay. And then I was kind of curious, following up on the window thing, why didn't you add a third window on that bottom row? I didn't see anything on the interior of the building that prevented you from doing that, and I agree, I like the idea of having light in there.
It's due to the slope that's happening along that facade. You can kind of make it out here that there is quite a bit of slope that's happening. So if we would have taken another window over, it would have been into the planters. So we just left that one out. We could have put in another window and stepped up the sill.
What's
then it wouldn't be
the
the same.
vertical height of your plant? So you're putting in brand new planters, correct?
They're existing planters.
They're existing planters?
We're only replacing the landscaping in those planters. The planters themselves are not being replaced.
So do you know what the vertical distance is from the adjacent lower window, what the difference would be if you would you have to, how much higher would you have to raise up those other 2 windows in order to clear that?
Off the top of my head, I would guess that we'd probably have to bring them up a couple 3 feet to clear, to make sure that we're clear. So 2 feet maybe. Off the top of my head, I don't know exact dimension.
And again, you're not rebuilding any of those planters, they're existing? I thought they were damaged during the removal of the trees.
The planters are damaged, but we're not replacing any aspects of the designs of the current planters. We're just replacing the planters that are damaged to match the existing planters that are still standing.
Those repairs have been done, haven't they?
Okay.
Haven't they already been repaired? They look repaired to me. I drive by it all the time.
Well, some of the planters have dents on them, so we're completing the repairs. Most of them have been repaired already and
Yeah.
match existing planters
Right.
in the building.
Okay, I just have a few questions. By the way, thank you. It's a good project. really, really cool. You're going to hear some stuff tonight, but I just think it's a cool project. So do you mind going back? There was a first slide there where you actually showed a original photograph. And right there. So it's obviously the window systems have been replaced. I mean, there was a spandrel system that went all what looked like 3 stories, but really was 2. And obviously, you're not going to be replacing that back to its historical detailing, we'll just say. But can you talk a little bit about why you've chosen to put the mullion spacing back and how? Because it's commercial in its aesthetic currently, and you're kind of keeping it that way, as opposed to what you see in this photo.
Well, are you referring to because this photo has that screen that's no longer there? So
Right.
Are you referring to the closer spaced screen that you're seeing in this photo?
Well, if I remember correctly, the mullions were supporting the screen. So the mullion space, yes, it had a scrim over the top of it, but the mullions were closer spaced. It's just a question.
So I believe that the closer spacing that we're seeing here is just a screen that was in front of the storefront system that's no longer there.
Okay.
The storefront proportions that we are matching the existing storefront, the actual mullions of the storefront system. We are doing an exact match of
Okay,
that.
but were those replaced? Those aren't original. That's not the original storefront, is it?
As far as I can tell,
Okay.
it might be
Okay.
from the condition
Well,
of it.
thank you.
Yeah.
And then, in terms of your plant, I'm not the plant. I was hoping you'd go plants, but in terms of your plant selection, I mean, some of those. I mean, we're not really looking at natives there, and some of them are kind of a little bit, lack of a better term, apartment type planting selections. I mean, any thoughts on that? Are you guys open to maybe doing a couple tweaks on some planting materials?
We're definitely open to any consideration or recommendations.
You guys have some really good planting on the rest of your property that you could be matching, I would think, so.
What we tried to do was to match the remaining small planters with the approved or not approved, the Catalina ironwood trees. And the recommendation we received from our landscaping company was to add those 5 different plants. But we are definitely open to any recommendations to induce in those plants.
Was it ever considered to kind of take the palette that you've already started and just wrap it around? Because there's definitely a palette on the east side.
East side
of the center.
Of the center.
Yeah.
We can definitely review that and consider that recommendation. I can send a couple of samples to Elizabeth on the new proposed landscaping, and she can forward it to you guys.
Okay, cool. And then I hate to keep beating you on this one, but those light fixtures, are they light fixtures or are they metal shrouds over standard light fixtures?
It's definitely a metal shroud. I have not taken it apart
Yeah.
to know what's inside of it.
Yeah.
But
So-
it's more of a...
So I guess the question is, if they're metal shrouds over probably off-the-shelf standard light fixtures, could the metal shrouds be painted, patched up, painted, possibly even putting back current light fixtures within the metal shrouds and put back in place?
I think you'd have to fabricate new metal shrouds to match the condition of them. I don't feel would be able to be maintained. Some of them are completely falling apart and peeling off, and so I think you'd be fabricating new ones to try to match them.
Okay. And then can you just had up their kind of primary rendering, whoever's doing that. Oh, sorry. Right there. So I got to ask, what's up with the beige? I mean, you guys just like went awesome on everything else that you guys have done. Right, you're sitting right next to a bright red building. Do we have any other bright red buildings in Ventura? And I don't know where you guys fall on this, but it works. Not to mention, you're in front of, love it or hate it, you're in front of Bus Home, which is you either love that thing or you hate it, and it's bright colored. And then you got beige number 4. Any thoughts about that?
They are standard exterior colors for 24-hour fitness, and they tend to blend with a lot of environments that we put it in, and they're not trying to make a statement with it, just trying to stay neutral. So
So with that question in mind, I mean, are there options for you that are still standard? I mean, I know they've got model A2, 3, and 4 that, 24-hour fitness does, so.
Sure.
I mean, if given, as the designer, if given the option, would you be suggesting something different to your client?
Is what they tend to do is paint the entries and the canopies, which we assume because of the historic nature that was off the limits. Or
Is that a historic
no.
color that you're putting on it?
So
Is that
kind of it's a white now. So if you're open to additional colors on the building, we can definitely look into that.
We'll negotiate with these people up here in a second.
So yeah, if we have that freedom, we were assuming that there would be a desire to keep it neutral since it's right now is neutral.
Sweet.
So
Thank you so much.
yep. Thank you.
Any other questions of the applicant? No? So with that, thank you. We may ask you to come back. Oh, no, we got one more for you, sorry.
On the second level, with the new windows, and you can leave it on the east side or the west side. Did you guys think of maybe doing skylights to get your natural light versus penetrating?
We'll do skylights as well.
So there is
There
also
are
skylights.
There's skylights proposed as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so she gave me an extra minute, so I got one more question to you. Do you mind going to the north elevation? Sorry, or the south? I don't know why I'm looking at you. He's kind of control. Actually, the south is even better because the south is replicating the north, correct? In terms of the window, the mullion placement. So my question to you is, would you be open to adding 1, 2, 3, 4 more vertical mullions within your window system on the north and south?
Sure. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Oh, I'm waiting on me. Okay, so if you're okay with it, I'm actually going to leave the open discussion kind of going. You guys can have a seat, and we'll, because I bet you have a feeling we're going to try to come back to you with a couple more questions. I only have, thank you. I actually only have one speaker card, and maybe you guys can fill out a speaker card when you can second. Oh, sweet. So I do have one speaker card for Stephanie Caldwell. Hello.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Stephanie Caldwell. I represent the Ventura Chamber of Commerce. And on behalf of the Ventura Chamber of Commerce, anytime we can reactivate a space that has been vacant for as long as this building has been vacant, which I would argue is probably more than half of many of our lifetimes, we think that's a great thing. And Mr. Klein, I agree with you. This is a very cool reuse of this building and keeping the spirit of the original architecture, but modernizing the interior for a modern purpose and modern use. So on behalf of the Chamber, we encourage you to allow this project to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. That's all the speaker cards I have on this. If anybody else would like to speak up, they can do so now, but I don't see any, so why don't we move on to deliberation on this. HPC? I think you got to put your mic on, I think.
Here we go. I really think that they've done a great job with, keeping the building intact and really honoring the integrity of it. I'm not a huge fan of the red and 24-hour fitness, but I also understand that that's the logo of the company, and you don't really change something like that, so I can live with it.
Any other comments, please?
I'm really happy that the building's being reused, and I think this is a really good adaptive use of the building because it is able to maintain all the primary features, and they've gone to a great extent to do that, and to keep all of the alterations or the major alterations on secondary facades. I, too, question the paint color. So I hope you will discuss that with design review because I think it verges more into your territory. But to me, the white portico and the trim on the building really highlight the mid-century modern character of that building. And the rest of it is more or less beige right now anyway, but I think the white is pretty much a characteristic of the mid-century modern, and if that could be maintained, I think that would be better. And that's it.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Have to agree with the paint. It'd be, Staples is next door, right? It's bright red. White walls, red trim. Embrace it. I mean, the portico, white, because it was white. The trim was white. Keep that white. You guys can, the color. I'd like to see the lighting repaired or something, at least a nod to what was there, because it's vertical. It's with the vertical lines of the building, mid-century theme versus a box. I'm not real happy about that first window by itself. I don't, the symmetry of it. The building's very symmetrical, and that kind of messes up the symmetry on the west elevation. I know that you can't put one below. I'll just assume them not put the one above. That would be my feelings towards that. Thank you.
Okay, so not to, repeat what everyone else has said, but I also, in terms of historic preservation and the structure's eligibility for state and local historic status, I don't have a problem with changing a paint color or having some fun with the paint, especially because of the portico and the vertical lines of the trim that are such an important feature of this architecture. I would not have a problem with playing around with that and emphasizing the verticality of the building. Likewise, I would be in favor of fabricating some copy or nod, updated nod even, to the vertical lighting fixtures, because again, the vertical lines are the key characteristic of this building. I also am not crazy about the windows on the west side, because it is although it's a secondary facade, it is a prominent facade because the roadway, the driveway goes right past there. But I do understand the desire to have natural light. So I'm willing to kind of bend on that. But I do agree with Member Schaefer that some of the symmetry of the building, which is a key characteristic of this building, is lost by having that one kind of lone window toward the north end. So I don't know if there's, that's not lighting the pool, the first level, and possibly skylights can go there to provide some natural light for that segment of the building and the interior. I just want to also emphasize that this is a great project. I'm so happy this building is being reused. You guys have done a great job retaining some of the most important characteristic features. And I believe that with the proposals and the amendments that we probably are going to suggest, that this will retain its state and local eligibility. Thanks.
Great. So with that, can we get a motion? And just so I'm clear, we're making a motion for where we're just recommending approval to DRC, correct? That's all we're really doing.
Your HPC is forwarding a recommendation of approval to the DRC
Cool.
by minute motion. Don's pulling it up for us. There we go.
Okay, so I'll try to put something together to keep this moving, because I know you guys have a busy agenda tonight. I say that we move to accept as proposed, with the caveats that we would prefer to see some sort of fabricated lighting that match or nods to the original lighting on the north side. The west side. That it be considered not adding that second-story window on the west side near the north end, and that design review consider other paint colors.
So just so I'm clear, what you're doing is you're asking DRC to consider that in there.
Right.
Okay. Cool. We have a
I'll
second.
second it.
We have a second, a motion and a second. Can we get a roll call, please? Yeah, I'm sorry, any other conversation about that? Can we get a roll call, please?
Member Houston? Yes. Member Mercer?
Yes.
Member Schaefer?
Yes.
Vice Chair Klein?
Yes.
Chair Huckins?
Yes.
Thank you. And so just so we're clear, that was a recommendation for DRC to consider those things that were brought up over here. So that's, so with that, I'm going to toss over to our DRC members here for comments and comments on what HPC just said.
I think we certainly could ask the applicant to rethink the paint colors to be more consistent with the mid-century character of the building. I think reestablishing the light fixtures is probably a pretty good suggestion. On the windows, I'd be more comfortable with adding the sixth window. I think that would balance things out. They could obviously raise the header another 8 or 16 or 24 inches and make that work.
Can I stop you real quick?
Sure.
Do you mind if we ask the applicant, maybe the architect, to come up, and we can do a quick little design charrette on how best to solve this issue for them? Because I'd hate to have a window that's got a different head height than the rest of the windows. Can we have a 30-second design charrette on this one?
Yeah, I would propose that we would add a sixth window to keep
Okay.
the symmetry, because if you lose that one additional window, then you're not symmetrical anymore. So we can certainly study it, and once the final landscaping is determine how much we have to raise those sills to get a sixth window
Yeah,
in.
and I don't know about you, but I would be open for you adjusting your planter I would want you to get as much daylight in that as possible, which I think is what you're trying to do, personally.
Yeah, we're trying to make
So-
sure that we don't raise the sill height too much that you can't, that it's above
Yeah.
head level. But
Okay.
it's something that we will definitely study
Thank you.
more.
Just hang out for a little bit. I bet
Okay.
you've got a few more for you. Keep going.
Yes.
So I'd like to completely agree with you about the paint color. I was really concerned about the paint color when I first saw it. I love the idea. What the striking elements of this building are the vertical elements. And with regard to that, one of the things I'd like to suggest is that you omit the trees and the planters. And what I'd like to suggest instead of trees and the planters is that you consider doing vertical lines, vertical metal wires or that go up, and have vines going on them as a substitute, because in fact the particular tree that you're even picking is eventually going to cover up all those windows, and all that light that you're trying to get let in there is going to be a maintenance issue after a while. In that consideration, what you might be able to do, and I haven't gone out there and specifically looked at the heights of these planters, but if you switch from trees to vines in these particular planters, you can put them in a smaller planter itself. So maybe you can consider the height, the vertical height of the planters, and drop it down in balance with bringing the height of the windows up in order to get that sixth window in there. The other thing I don't know if you would be willing to consider, but again, going along with the line of the verticality, is did you consider doing narrower and longer windows in these areas at all? Because they seem very square to me, and I know that's probably your thought was to bring in as much light as possible, but I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, we looked at a lot of different options, and some skinnier, taller. So this is the one that we settled on. We thought it that it fit the proportions well between those vertical elements. So that's what we settled on. But
Okay.
they can be adjusted as well.
Okay, so I love the idea of bringing the white or like a shell white color on the trim and the vertical porte-cochere there. I think it's great. The color that I'd like to introduce for the building itself is maybe a gray, because I think that gray is a very modern color, and I think that 24-hour fitness sign, the red on that, is just going to pop off of it. So if you have white on your very 1960s style elements, and then you bring in a great-looking modern gray as your base for the whole building, and then you got that pop of the red and the 24-hour fitness, I think you're really updating your building. The other thing I think you might want to consider is reducing the quantity of variety of plant material. One of the things that I think Tyson was bringing up was on the other side of this parking lot, they have you have mass plantings of the same variety of shrub. There's a lot of controversy on this plant, but I love the grass that's on the other side of the property. So if you consider a vertical element of a vine and then a lower massing element of just one shrub, I think you're going to go back to the original simplicity and elegance and the verticality, I think, of this particular building. I think you start bringing in 6 or 8 different varieties of plants, and it's going to take away from the simplicity of the design of the building. I think that's about all I have.
Dilly. I would agree with everything that's been said. So let me try to sum up, and maybe I'll also just put my 2 cents in here. I also just got passed a note from the historical people. And the last sentence is, have fun with paint color. So, and buildings can be historical and then painted some crazy color because you can just paint it again, right? So, we have to be careful. It can't be too garish, but I think there's some great options there. So let me start with the windows. I'll start with this elevation. I agree with you that the opening size is the correct proportion to light the space and for the elevation, but I would also suggest that you put one more vertical mullion in your window, and that whole thing will become vertical, right? So all those windows will become vertical within the bigger opening, and you don't have to change anything. If you're willing to consider that 6th window, the whole thing goes away. I would suggest you deal with your planner to get them all to work, because I think you're proportioning. Actually, that's a beautiful, industrial building elevation right there. It's a gorgeous elevation. So that brings up the other reason why that elevation would work for me is whoever designed this building thought, man, this is a big old blank wall, so I'm going to make my light fixtures become the only thing architectural in this elevation. So that was a definite choice. And there's a couple things, I think HB was talking about, like doing, a repop, trying to reproduce them. I don't know if I would put that on you. I think there may be some really good modern examples of fixtures that have dimension, and that's what you need. You need a fixture that's a foot or 10 inches deep. That's vertical. You can get a great LED fixture to do that, and maybe shoot light up and down. You're not going to be annoying anyone there, and it'd be a great wall washer, which I think that's what it did. I think it had penetrations and it had wall washers. So I would suggest that you ditch your whole wall pack concept, go back to your 6 or 8 or whatever it was. Just pick a really good fixture that works for you. And try to get the proportion. And it may even need to be 2, on top of each other to get that same proportion back. And I think it would be great, and it would be a really good front door from that side. So that's one thing. So we talked about windows, and then on the north and the south, I think you agreed if we can get another. You got the spacing, just add in those blank spots, and you kind of get back that historic kind of texture. I didn't know that it was screened, but I think you would get back that verticality in that building. Planting, I think you got to look at being part of your context. What you guys are doing over there, just bring it around. It sounded like you guys were concerned about there was already a pre-approved tree. Who cares? I would do what's appropriate, and I also want to support the concept that I think you need something vertical. You could do something like a freestanding green screen or something like that, but maybe you're just picking the right plant that's very vertical, because you got a huge wall to work with there, and maybe it is a mono planting where it's just one big vertical thing that's a beautiful planting. I think if you're putting trees back in there, you're going to be doing the same thing and blowing out your planter boxes. Okay, so then my last comment is the color. And do you mind going back to that? Historic photograph? And I think everything that's been said is that these buildings, 50s and 60s buildings, worked on contrast, and these huge this is a historic big box, right? So it's all about contrast. There it is, that stark white. And I think if you were to just take those whites and reproduce those whites, and then go and find a really good contrast color for the panels, you're done. right? If it's gray, that would, a nice, warmer gray or something that contrasts really well. But I wouldn't be scared to let you pick the right color and look at those other buildings, look at it in context, look at it next to the red building and make it work for you. So that would be my comment. And 24-hour fitness, is that logo is and it's your brand. So
Yeah,
it's got to work with that too. And I think grays could do that. I do. So and I really appreciate everyone's effort on this project, because I think this actually could be kind of a sense of pride for the community that someone was able to take. I've seen the roof. It's like Swiss cheese. So I applaud you for even wanting to take the building. So, so with that, comments or motion? Can we get a motion? There's definitely some comments that need to be tacked on this motion, I think.
Yeah.
And I'm also wondering, so can we approve this tonight and then go through a confirmation of detail to check these things, or can we get staff to do that? What do we want to do here?
So you guys have a couple of options. You guys can add a confirmation of detail item, or you could appoint a DRC liaison to work with staff to go over these elements.
Okay. I would do that if you guys want that done.
Okay, then I'll motion approval subject to standard conditions. So I'm going to motion for approval subject to standard conditions detailed by staff. We're going to appoint a DRC liaison to work on the colors, the light fixtures on the west side, landscaping, vertical landscaping, and windows, either additional windows or modification to the windows. Do you have anything else?
I don't think so. Is that good? I'm good with it. Can we get a second?
Can staff chime in? Can we be a little bit more specific?
No.
I think Tyson had a pretty good list, and then Fiona had a lot of good planting comments. Can we just go quickly through that to make sure we're all on the same page?
Okay, so I think there's a general comment about lighting, specifically on the west side, that if they can reproduce those or they can fix those, that would be great, and then put a new fixture inside. If they can't, go find the right a fixture that kind of reproduces that. And it's lighting as object, I think, is the comment there. In terms of the windows, I think we're suggesting, and I think they're open to putting additional vertical mullions in to create more verticality in the windows.
And that would be on the north
All
and
windows.
south elevation?
All windows.
All windows, all
North,
three
south,
elevations?
and
Okay.
west. We're asking them to look at planting that respects the existing center's palette and treats these planters in a vertical manner. I don't know, help me. Looks at it vertically.
To introduce a plant pellet that enhances the vertical nature of the structure, either through vines attached to the building or very limited, like Italian cypress even, something very simple, vertical element.
I would just suggest, maybe if you can get something that's, at least regionally adaptive that, would grow here and live here.
And raise a family here and be very happy. And then have a simple, and then the ground plane plant material be of, just use one plant all around, just keep it really clean. And look into the existing palette on the other part of the site.
And then finally, color. I think we got a nod across the table about doing a crisp white for the trim and the entry porte cochere, and then allowing them to come back with a appropriate contrasting color of their choice. But yeah, we'll leave it at that. Oh, and back to the windows, we were going to, we're not recommending, we're conditioning that they add the 6th window. Thank you. So we have a motion and a second, and everyone's good with that?
And did you guys appoint a?
I'll do it.
Okay, Tyson's our liaison. Awesome, thanks.
Cool. So can we get a roll call, please?
Member Annelman?
Yes.
Member Dunn? Yes. Acting Chair Klein?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Great project. What do I do here?
I'm going to adjourn this meeting.
What's that?
I'm going to adjourn the meeting.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so thanks, everybody. I want to just also thank Jeff for the update that he gave us at the beginning of the meeting. That was really generous information. And also to thank the applicant for a great project and for everyone up here tonight who cooperated to, I think, make this into an amazingly great project. At this point, I'm going to adjourn the HPC meeting, and we will break for 5 minutes before the DRC reconvenes. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna go ahead and get started here. If you could take a seat, that'd be awesome, Mr. White. Yep. Never seen you move so fast, man. Okay, so we'll move on to continuing item number 5, formal design review consisting of existing facade, modification to existing one-story, 2,400 square foot commercial building located on a 10,400 square foot lot located at 3553 Telegraph. And
You'd have to do the minutes from November 15th.
did I skip that?
Yeah.
Do I have to? I'm sorry. So disregard that, and actually, can we get a motion or comments on the approval of November 15th DRC meetings?
I'll make a motion that we approve yeah.
Can we get a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. Sorry about that. So we're back on item number 5, which is the KFC site, and who do we have over there? Who's helping us tonight?
I will
Thank
help you today.
Ian, go for it.
All right. So actually, I wasn't prepared to do a presentation, but this is a continued item from back in July, and the DRC's direction was to either replicate the existing paint palette that was on it or comply with the 1997 design guidelines. And so the applicant has come back with basically using the same color palette that exists today. And so we have a notice of decision before you that basically would effectuate that proposal. So if you would like, I can walk through the presentation, but other than that, I would recommend approval.
Do we need that? Do we need a presentation to approve the colors that are already on the building? So then, discussion? Well, do we have any public comment on this or communication? I don't have any speaker cards, so then I'll go ahead and close it. Comment? Approval? Motion then? Should we go there and have some dinner and then figure it out?
So I'll make a motion that we approve as submitted.
And I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call, please?
Member Annelman?
Yes.
Member Dunn?
Yes.
Acting Chair Klein?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so then we can move on to item number 6, which is a confirmation of detail. Thank you. Combined progress meeting at 50% completion of the design. This is the Westside Renaissance Senior Apartment Project consisting of 100 affordable 50 unit senior project.
I thought we were all meeting this.
We are. So on the
Oh, on the agenda.
2686 North Ventura Avenue, the senior apartment confirmation and detail, that project needs to be continued for lack of quorum.
That's right, it does. Okay, so then we need a motion of continuance. Do we have a date?
To a date certain of, is it the 20th? What's your next meeting date? Is your next meeting date on the 20th?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
It'd be to the 20th.
So then we need a motion of continuance of this item to December 20th.
A motion for continuance to December 20th.
Can we get a second?
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Member Edelman?
Yes.
Member Dunn?
Aye.
Acting Chair Klein?
Yes. And
Then do we have to say this one is moving to another date as well?
No, we're going to do Holiday Inn, right?
I think you just had those flipped. We're okay.
I'm
So
just totally confused.
so we are doing item number 7. Sorry, the new building's throwing us off, I think. So then we can move on to item number 7, which is confirmation of details, correct? Pursuant to condition number 23 of notice to decision, formal design review of a 23,961 square foot, 3-story, 40-room addition to an existing 69-room hotel, Holiday Inn Express. Turn the page. Located at 1080 Navigator Drive, and I believe Elizabeth is our planner.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. So this is confirmation of details for Holiday Inn Express. We are located down on the harbor. Navigator Drive parallels Harbor Boulevard, backs up to the harbor water. Just some photographs for some context of where we're at. We are in the harbor commercial comprehensive plan as well as the harbor commercial zone. So the project that that DRC approved back in, I believe, 2015 was for the expansion of the existing Holiday Inn Express hotels. So they are proposing a 23,961 square foot, 3-story, 40-room addition to the existing 69 square foot hotel. There'll be a new lobby, new porte cochere. At the time, we thought there was going to be a new swimming pool. That has since changed. They did remove it due to concerns and issues with the fencing that surrounded it and being located within the view corridor that was given to this property as part of the LCP amendment that allowed the increase in number of hotel rooms. The architecture does match the existing building in that Art Deco style. Or craftsman style. It's Frank Lloyd Wright style. There's enhanced landscaping and access to the site is off of Navigator Drive. Again, it was approved in October. Condition number of 2015. Condition 2023 requires confirmation of details. This is what was approved for the site. This is the formal site plan for the site. This is the area of what's new. This is where the swimming pool was. That's now been deleted. Elevations of the building in the style that matches the existing building. And then that's the rear elevation. And then this is a landscaping plan. One of the confirmation and details items was for a landscaping plan that's at a scale that's more legible, which they've provided for this process. So confirmation and detail items that were given to us regarding the linear trim on the porte cochere, to remove that, and the stone should move up the columns. They've complied with that. Use of a repeated enhanced paving, they've complied with that. Providing the landscaping plans at a scale that's made so that the details can be reviewed. They have provided a complete set of landscaping plans that are at a more legible scale. They've also updated the plant palette as taking into consideration both DRC's comments as well as they're going through plan check, and they've had their landscaping plan check, and there's been additional modifications to the landscaping plans for those comments. They've modified their tree planting. Comments about the pool no longer apply since we no longer have a pool. And then the lighting details, they have provided those, and they're prepared to talk about those tonight. So next steps, since we're in plan check, be plan check and building permit issuance. And then DRC, or staff is recommending design review, approve the construction plans by minute motion, and my applicant team's here to present the project.
Are you done? Okay. Sorry. So I do have one speaker card, and we're going to let the applicant speak, but I'm going to kind of try to read the room because this is confirmation details, so I don't know if we really need a big presentation unless there's something specific. And I would only ask our planner, Elizabeth, one question, if you don't mind, is so this is in plan check?
Correct. They are in plan check. They've been in plan check for quite a while, and it wasn't until we got here towards the end of it that we realized we had not had a confirmation of details on this project.
Okay. All right. So
I'll only add, I think they're this step away from getting a permit.
Yeah.
So they're at the end of the plan check
Right.
process.
And my only question is there's just an item I'm going to ask about that has to do with what we're seeing at the architectural, and there's not structural in here. So I just want to make sure that if they're saying something at the structural level, that it's backed up by if they're saying something at the architectural level, it's backed up by structural, which would mean they would be in plan check. So that's where I'm heading with that.
Correct. Right. We're in plan check. It's been reviewed by Yolanda.
Right. So I would just ask the applicant. I mean, we may have questions. If you feel like you need to give the presentation, you can. You should probably read the room. We'll read the room too. Please.
Okay.
And I don't have a speaker card, so just when you're done, if you could just please fill one out, that'd be great.
No, I'm not accustomed to having to fill one out when I'm already on the agenda, so in most places. So.
Welcome to Ventura.
I know, sorry. My bad. Anyway, my name's Steve Kiki. I'm the architect of record for the project. Been working on this thing since about 2007 or 2008, and it is my understanding that again, all of the conditions that we were assigned in terms of, the compliance that we have complied with. I know the one component that I brought with me is the lighting, so I don't know if there are any questions about the lighting, but it mainly had to do with exterior lighting. Mm-hmm. So we have some pole lights in the parking lot. We have an isometric that goes with that, and all that's been submitted to Elizabeth. We have some downlights in the porte cochere. We also have some uplights that are shining up on the porte cochere that you really don't see. We have some egress lighting that's architectural in style, and then we also have some bollards around the property. So that's pretty much the extent. And again, to my knowledge, we complied with everything along those lines. Architecturally, I don't think we had any issues, and certainly nothing that would have a structural impact. And Megan Rios from Rios Design, the landscape architect, is here, and she can answer any of your landscape questions or comments.
Great. Thank you so much. Maybe just hang out in case there are. So any questions, comments, or questions right now, I guess? No? So I just have one, and so this is what I was asking Elizabeth about. So the porte cochere in terms of member sizes and spans and what we're seeing in the architectural elevations, that's all been verified through structural, and
yes,
you feel good about the slenderness ratio of everything?
Yes, we've had a very strident structural review.
Okay. All right. And your architectural plans are represented their
Exactly.
size members. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
They're
all right.
all coordinated.
So then, thank you. So I do have a speaker card from Brian Pendleton of the Port District, but he's just saying if we've got questions, we can ask him. Is that right, Brian? Okay.
That's correct, Chairman.
Thank you. So with that, I'm trying to move things.
I'll motion for approval, subject to whatever conditions are placed. Interesting, I motioned for approval the first time around on this back in the 80s. So,
On the original project?
Yes, the original project, so it's kind of interesting to see it come back again.
Isn't that a conflict of it? No, I'm just joking.
So for this project, since it is confirmation of details, there is no resolution, so you're just proving what you have.
Okay. Motion for approval.
Yeah, I'll second it. The landscape plan is lovely. The upgrades are fabulous. I really appreciate the massing that you did, so I think it's great.
Okay, so then we have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call, please?
Member Annelman?
Yes.
Member Dunn?
Yes.
Acting Chair Klein?
Yes, thank you. Great project. Thank you very much. Okay. No. No. So we're moving on. Yeah, okay. Okay, so we can move on to, geez, thank you. Those are all 9. We can move on to item number 8, I believe. And this is a conceptual item, conceptual design review for a proposed demolition of an existing 2,900 square foot commercial building and the new construction of a 2- and 3-story 12-unit residential courtyard building with 27 parking spaces on .31 acres located at 1926 East Thompson Boulevard. And I believe Dawn is our planner.
Thank you, Chair Klein, members of the DRC, and members of the public. So the project is located at 1926 East Thompson Boulevard. It's right at the corner of Thompson Boulevard and Santa Cruz Street. It is located within the coastal zone, so it has an existing urban land use designation. What that means is that it actually takes the base zoning then in order to describe the actual land use there. It is located within the Midtown Corridors Plan, so it has a T4.5 urban general zone. And this is just some of the images showing the project location and then some of the adjacent properties. Here we have what's across the street, and then we're also looking down Santa Cruz Street. And then this is just, again, another context slide showing the project location in the greater context of the neighborhood. As Chair Klein had mentioned, it is in order to demolish an existing commercial building, a single-story commercial building, and then construct a new residential building that's 2 and 3 stories. Really of note is that this is a conceptual project. This is coming back for a second round of that, not a formal project. So, as I had mentioned before, it's construct a new 2 and 3 story building, 12 units, approximately 1,300 square feet, with 27 parking spaces. A little bit of background on the project. It originally actually goes back to 2007. On this site is when development was first being proposed. And then in 2009, a project went to the DRC for 4 residential units above commercial spaces. However, that project did expire in 2009. The project then came back. A new project came back in 2015, and City Council reviewed it, and they provided some of their comments, which we have here, and we can come back to them if you would like to. And then in 2016, the DRC conceptually reviewed the project the first time and provided additional comments based on the architecture and the massing of the project. And then in March of this year, the DRC did their first formal review of the project. It provided additional comments on it, really focusing on massing and the architecture as well. And so here we have the comments from those hearings. And again, we can refer back to these comments. And then in August, the project came back for a second round of formal review. And the DRC provided additional comments as well as reaffirming the comments from the March hearing. So this was the second round. As part of this particular hearing, the DRC did encourage the applicant to come back for a second conceptual review before they move on to a third and final formal review. And so here we just have some of the comments that the DRC provided. Now, comparing the project to the 1989 comprehensive plan, the project is located within the Catalina community, so it does meet the intent of the Catalina community, since even though it does identify the lower density, it's a lower density neighborhood, it does identify increased commercial activity and really an intensification of uses on Main Street and Thompson Boulevard. And it has the existing urban land use designation, as I mentioned earlier, and it is located within the Midtown Corridors Code. Also, we compare the project to the housing element, and we did identify that it meets multiple goals and policies and action items that are contained within the housing element, really in order to try and provide a range of housing types for both current and future residents, as well as trying to provide housing that meets all different economic segments of the community in order to really achieve that more balanced community. And also the housing element, it does contain the policy which encourages development at the upper end of the permitted zoning code. So in this case, or for the density. So that's what we could be seeing as well. Also, it does meet the idea of the equal opportunity for all residents within the city. A little bit of, for the historical context, I did go before the Historic Preservation Committee in 2008. They did find, though, that the existing structures were not historically significant. After conceptually comparing the project to the T4.5 zone, we found that it mostly conforms to those requirements, with the exception of a frontage type setback, as well as the something within the building typology. It's more the massing. We'll get into that a little bit. So here we have, we're going back in time, and we're going to be seeing this with the site plans and the elevations, just to show the progression of the project to what we have now under this conceptual idea. So this is from March of this year, and then this is from August. So these were both formals, and now this is the current December conceptual site plan. So this site plan really hasn't changed overall. And then here we have, this is going to be the second floor plan, again, going back to March, and then this is to the August. And here we're really identifying where the second floors and the second floor of the lofts are. And then this is the second floor for what's currently before you under this conceptual project. And here we have, this would be identified as the third floor back in March. And then here we have it for August. And no, I'm sorry, this is the current one. I did forget to change the date on this. And here we have, this is actually a sectional of the project. This is going, we have Thompson Boulevard on the left and the public alleyway and the existing residence on the right-hand side. Really of note, the applicant has also inserted the previous heights that were identified in there. They're kind of a dotted line. So that's what the project previously used to be, and so the overall massing of the project has actually been scaled back down. And here we have just some more of the sectionals showing the project. The building, it does emulate the courtyard building typology, and it does comply mostly with the requirements of the courtyard building type. There is a dooryard for the frontage type, and that does have the dooryard actually was elevated from the previous time, because before the dooryard was actually going to be flush with the public sidewalk, and the DRC had a desire to have that raised up so it's acts as more of a true dooryard. So that dooryard has actually been elevated as well. And then it does have, there is a frontage type minimum. It does ask that the dooryard be set back, or the face of the building be set back 10 feet. So along Thompson Boulevard, it's 10 to 12 feet. On Santa Cruz Street, it still is an 8 foot. It does not trigger a warrant. This is more up to the design review committee to discuss whether that 8 foot on Santa Cruz Street is still acceptable. And so here we just can kind of see the area of that 8 foot setback. And so that's the approximate line of where you would see 10 feet from the property line. Also, just looking at the landscaping criteria for it, it does appear to meet most of it. We do ask that the DRC comment on the conceptual planning plan of the courtyard area, since the plan does identify that the courtyard should be landscaped in a way to avoid the sensation of a forced podium. And so here we can kind of see the a landscape area. Now, in terms of the courtyard building massing and sizing, the Midtown Code, it actually has different ratios for buildings. Also, it does look that the building is broken up, so it's not a complete monolithic building. That's right on Thompson. When looking at this structure, there are two primary facades that are each about 48 feet wide. They are connected at the third top, on the third story. But right now, the primary facade is actually kind of broken up, which emulates more of the storefronts along Thompson Boulevard. And so here we have also so you can see what some of the more of the commercial and residential properties along Thompson Boulevard are looking like. Now, we do have if you have to bear with me, the next couple of slides are a little bit more technical. The city has some LiDAR data, so we were able to capture the elevations of the surrounding areas. And so what we see here on the top, that's actually going to be what's the data that's being bounced back and gives us kind of the elevation that we have. So in comparing the project to the approximate elevations that we have, the tallest building right now is the Discovery Building, which is 31 feet. And so the proposed project at the tallest point, which is the parapet, is at 33 feet, 3 inches. So it's not that much taller than the highest point on Discovery, whereas but a majority of the rest of the building is actually going to be lower than the 33 feet. Then we also did a comparison of the project to the residential homes that are along Santa Cruz Street, so directly to the south of it. And so the tallest building in this location is about 20 feet, which is the residential structure directly behind it. So you can see it's right here. This big blip, green blip, that's a tree. And right here in the red kind of outline, that's the approximate location of the heights that you would be seeing on this particular structure. So the rear portion of the development is about, I think it's 21 feet. So that's more in line with the average elevations of the neighborhood directly to the south. Now, here's where I had mentioned before the ratios for the buildings. The courtyard typology does require, it has suggested height ratios, but then if you deviate from those height ratios, it triggers a warrant for a project. And given that we are in the T4.5 zone, when you have a 3-story building, the building type requires you to have a portion of a 4-story. However, the base zone itself prohibits you from having a 4-story. So this warrant is actually an automatic trigger for any type of building that is 3 stories. Now the project, and so that applies to all the buildings within the Midtown Corridor Plan. So here we can see this is the project, and we're at 33 feet on Thompson and then 21 feet on the rear. Just kind of really of note, all the R16, so the entire neighborhood to the south, the maximum height that you can actually go in there is 2.5 stories, or it's essentially 3 stories at 30 feet. And if we were to go back to our previous one and we were doing massing of the neighborhood, if everyone could by right develop their lot into a 3-story, 30-foot high development, and that's all by right. It doesn't have to go before the design review committee, everything else. So they can actually just go in and submit to the city for that. So here we have, this is the ratio. Before the 2-story ratio has actually increased slightly, and the 3-story percentage has actually decreased from the August submittal as well. And here you can kind of see what's in orange, that's what would be in 3 stories, and what's in blue, that's more of the 2 stories. And here we have this is the Thompson elevation. Again, we're going back in time to March, and then here we have August, and then here we have the December. This is what's before you tonight. And this is what was originally went before you in 2016. This is what came back in March. This was in August, and then this is what's before you today. So you can actually see on the rear portion of the development, it has been increasingly, or the height has actually been decreasing each time the project has come back to you. And then this is the Santa Cruz elevation. So again, we're in March and August of this year, and then this is the current elevation as well. You can see from the previous ones, it's still the height on the rear area is decreasing as you're moving towards the residential area. And again, this is kind of more the perspective of the original one from 2016, and then in March of this year, August, and then what we have today. And here's the rear elevation along the public alley. So what we had seen previously, and then this is what we have currently. And then this was, sorry, that actually should have been deleted. In terms of the architecture, it is more of a contemporary modern in here we have the materials, cement plaster, and fiber cement panels, aluminum doors and windows, and some trims as well. Staff did compare the project to the 1997 design guidelines, and we did find that it was mostly compliant with the requirements for development within those guidelines. And here we have these. Also, we found that it was compliant with the Thompson Boulevard specific guidelines. One of the key differences, though, is the Thompson Boulevard, it looks to have buildings designed more in an Art Deco style in order to kind of recreate when it was originally developed. However, in order to avoid the false sense of history, the building is not following that design direction, and it has been previously supported for deviating from that design direction. Also, staff did distribute the project to the other departments contained within the city. We do want to bring up to the DRC that subsequent to the release of the staff report, staff and the applicant have engaged with the fire department to resolve some of the issues that that have been brought up through them, primarily along the western property line and the landscaping area. Here we have some of the building and safety comments and the land development comments as well. Staff, also subsequent to the release of the staff report, staff did receive a memo from the public. It was an email letter. So we did distribute that to the DRC, and there should be copies available made to the public. So the next steps from tonight is that the project would then have to go back for a formal action by the design review committee. And then if it passes that last formal action, it would go before the city council's call for review notification process. And then it would also be scheduled for the coastal permit approval, and then have to go back for a confirmation of details, which it would be contained within any type of approval document. And then after that, plan check, and then design review compliance. So staff recommends, solicits the DRC to provide comments on the proposed conceptual project, particularly focusing on courtyard landscaping, the building size and massing, and that height ratio, which would trigger, the height ratio would trigger the warrant. And then also the architectural style. Thank you.
That's me. This chair stuff's hard. Thank you. Any questions of staff? No? Okay, seeing none. Mike, you got a presentation? So I've got, I actually have two speaker cards, and if you wish to speak on this item, please fill out a speaker card, and you're welcome to do so.
the same PowerPoint?
No need.
Oh.
Thanks, Ian.
Hi, Mike.
I wouldn't know how to operate that thing if I had to, so. Anyway, I'm here to answer any questions. I think Don gave a great presentation. He kind of highlighted the changes that have been made. I'd like to point out in this particular rendering, I don't have a flashing thing, but anyway, you can see how we've altered the massing from the alley towards Santa Cruz and staggered up towards Thompson Boulevard. And we've also incorporated what we hope to be the suggestion made previously. Thank you. We hope to create what was asked for, a more unified architectural massing in terms of context. So we've treated the building facade along Thompson as two separate masses. There's a porte cochere there, or excuse me, a zaguan that runs right through there. We've elevated the door yards. Previously they were at grade, now they are 24 inches above grade. And again, the important thing to note is that, as Don pointed out, the massing back here along the alley goes from basically a one-story to two-story, then to a third level. Important to note that this is, by building code definition anyway, a two-story building, because what's happening in the middle here is loft space, meaning it's like a mezzanine. So this counts as one story in this portion here, and this is the actual second floor here. And this is actual 2 stories here and 1 story here. So I'm hoping that we've achieved the request made by DRC, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks, Mike. Any questions of the applicant? No? I did, but now I dropped it. I didn't see a roof plan. Is there not a full building roof plan?
There's a roof terrace plan, which Don can probably pull up.
But above that?
It shows a roof terrace. Let's see it. There we go. Well, there it is. There, okay, very good. Yeah, this is our roof terrace here. This is above the second floor of this unit below. This is our elevator that takes us from grade to the second level. And again, this is second level up here. This portion here would be the only 3-story portion of the project, which is set back on the southwest corner. And so this provides a lower elevation along the street and adjacent to the alley, and also enables all the residents to come up to this roof terrace and hopefully capture some ocean views.
So, Mike, I get it. There's not a roof plan up here, and that's fine. Can you talk a little bit about how you're using this roof, and in particular how these masses return on the roof? And I'll explain in a second. Do you have mechanical equipment? Are you putting anything on the roof? Is anything happening up there?
No.
So can you go? There's a view that your main view, whoever's controlling this presentation. From the north.
Looking for maybe a bird's eye or something?
Northeast corner. Sorry, guys.
Sorry.
And then I'm going to make you go back to that same. No, I'm just sorry.
That's
that's fine. So these elements here.
Yes.
So because we don't have a roof plan, I don't really know where those terminate. But it appears in these renderings it's going back about 2 feet, and this one's going back about 5 feet. The depth of that mass is that intentional, or
Yes.
what's your thought there?
Yes.
Okay.
Basically flat roofs. Those parapets. This parapet here is roughly 16 or 18 inches above the roof surface. This is more like 36 inches above the roof surface.
Okay, cool. And then I hate for you to go to it, but in your site plan, it looks like right here there's I think you're locating a transformer possibly.
There's a transformer that occurs right over here adjacent to the driveway entrance.
Okay, and then there's kind of a condition where it's residential, and then this space. What's behind this space? I'm curious.
Parking.
So it's parking right there.
On-grade parking.
Okay, cool.
Those are architectural metal grills right there.
Right. And then is there any I'm sorry, just anything that shows the first floor or the site plan, sorry. So is there any way, yeah, this is even fine. So I think transformer's there?
Transformer is right there, yes.
Okay. And so you've got parking, and then actually what that is those windows occur here?
Those are the architectural grills.
Yeah,
There's
I'm
a
sorry, you're
solid
right,
wall
grills.
right here.
Okay.
With the metal grills along that side.
Okay, so I understand. So you're actually pulling that out and kind of shadowing the parking?
Yes.
Okay, I understand now.
Mhm. The idea was to screen the parking.
Cool.
Mike, I think I might have asked you this last time. Your roof drainage is all internal?
Yes.
Roof drains, there's no scuppers or downspouts?
That's correct.
Same thing with the awnings, they're all draining?
Yes. And these are, at previous request, these are now metal awnings, they're not fabric awnings.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. No more questions? So I do have a couple, thanks, Mike. We got
Thank you.
a couple speaker cards. Joe Cahill. Sorry about the hillside there.
That's okay.
Joe.
I'm Joe Cahill. I live at 324 South Catalina, which is very close to this, and I got the notice in the mail. And I just wanted to express my support. I don't have any opinion about the design, but I think that hopefully it will set the tone for what can be done on sort of the Thompson corridor, because I think there's a great opportunity to add more structures like this for housing, which is something we really need. So I just wanted to express my support.
Thanks,
as a
Joe.
local neighbor.
Charlie Gartman, and it looks like he's got a comment, and I'll pass that, and then you have a speaker card. Welcome.
First, I'd like to say I'm also quite happy to see that someone's developing that area because I live very near that, block away. And that's been an eyesore for pretty much as long as I've lived in Ventura, which is all my life. But I do have a couple of comments I'd like to pass along. First, the height is a bit concerning. I don't see anything in the area that's three stories, even though it may be zoned for that. So that's a little odd to me. And if you compare it to the Discovery, that building has been there and is surrounded by a very large parking lot that doesn't obstruct any kind of views of the mountainside. That'd be the first thing. The second thing I would comment on, and again, I am supportive of this whole project, is the design. I think you'll find most of the houses in the area are either Spanish style or craftsman. And I'm not sure that what I saw hit me as blending with that. And I guess I'd say one more thing. I'm saying these comments because I know the entire Thompson corridor will be developed at some point, maybe not my lifetime, so I'm hoping that this carries on. And the last thing is, I know everyone's concerned with frontage from Thompson Boulevard, but I live on the south side, so there's a term I'm throwing out here called rearage. I don't know how else to describe it, but if you're on the south side of the project and you're seeing the alley turn into a driveway, that concerns me a little bit, also from a security standpoint, and that the alley that runs from Seaward all the way to the project has some, I don't want to be negative in any sense of the word, but just says, let me say, just has some things happening that are not probably things you would want in your backyard, like locked trash cans and security cameras and kinds of things of that nature. And I guess I would pass that on to the project developers so they can think about things like that, because it can't be an issue. Thank you very much for your time.
We're going to get hashtag rearage trending here in a couple days.
Thank you very much.
Mike, you want any other time after two comments? Or are you good? We can.
I'm sorry.
I was talking to the applicant. Sorry about that.
I'm ready to take this over.
You're good, Mike. Okay. So with that, I'll go ahead and close the public communication part of the meeting and for comment.
First, I appreciate the fact that you made an effort to lower the elevation of the back of the building for the residences that were nearby. I'm still a little concerned about the design, the facade, and I noticed that the applicant already brought in a lot of finished material. They addressed a lot of the finished material on there, and I'm a little concerned that the finished material that he picked is going to be dated. The tile, I'm not a fan of the tile that was picked on that trim on the top of the roof. I'm a little concerned about the colors. I'm not sure how the board form on the side there, on the easterly side, fits in when I don't really see it. It's a little bit on the back and it's not anywhere on the front. As far as the architectural style, if you're going to do modern, my favorite part about it is the board form walls, the little retaining walls that are on the front of it. They're a great gray kind of color, and I just think that's probably the most updated part of it, next to the metal awnings that I think are nice. My concern is that there's too much variation in the colors. You already have quite a bit of variation in the relief on the building on Thompson, and I'm a little concerned about bringing in the beigey kind of colors that to me feel really dated. I think maybe that can be addressed. It's hard to address the podium, the planting. It's such a sketchy drawing as far as the landscape plan. There's no named material. There's just symbols. And so I'd have to see something that's a little further developed before I really make any kind of comment. I still kind of feel like the architecture needs to be addressed before we.
Just to remind, they still are at conceptual, so
Yeah.
I think they're trying to get general direction probably.
So that's my concern, is basically that the presented finished materials, that the call-outs for the paints and the finishes on here are just a little too dark, and I'm a little concerned that they're going to be a little too dated.
Well, I'm quite pleased with the applicant's effort to reduce the massing and the scale in the rear. In general, I find the architectural design very appropriate for a mixed use. I agree with the colors. I think you might want to think about simplifying the colors or the palette of the building. I think you've got a lot of nice shade and shadow and undulating forms that would work, without so many different colors being applied to it. So in general, I'm quite pleased with what I see.
I would agree with most of those comments. I think I appreciate the effort that you're taking to address, and I think we talked about this the first meeting or the second meeting, trying to scale the building down as it blends into the neighborhood. I think you've actually achieved that. So this is all being said under the heading that we're at conceptual. So the idea is that they're going to move on to a formal, and so I think maybe what they're hoping for is that they get a general feeling of, hey, this is worth moving on to that next step. So these comments are under that heading, right? So I think there's still a design effort to happen here, but that the whole southeast edge, this piece here, I think it'd be kind of interesting. Actually, this elevation. Your north elevation is pretty handsome, and I think there's some things that you can do to simplify that, and maybe it's materials, but I think there's just a couple things, mainly at the ground plane. There you go, or there you go. To get this thing to feel more, I don't want to say house-like because that's not what you're doing. I appreciate the fact that you're screening the parking. But maybe this edge is softened ever so slightly, or maybe there's a way to get a planter to not maybe be at the ground plane and go up, but maybe from the top to go down, so that you're kind of softening that a little bit. And there's not a lot of planes or massing that go past each other. A good example of that is this planter, and the fact that you maybe could just pull it back ever so slightly and have it dive a little bit further back on that elevation, and have the thing kind of slip past each other. Can you go back to the main view you were showing us earlier? I think one of my biggest concerns, and has been there the whole time, is items like this where we see the architecture kind of revealing itself to be only parapet deep. And if that thing could just return ever so slightly, so we get a sense of that thing's not only 3 feet deep, it's actually a building up there. I think that's what you would typically see on these types of buildings. And I think, you know, there is some deco in this building, and I don't, our applicant couldn't afford to build deco today. The materials and you know, so I respect the comment about, you know, not fitting in. We can't afford to build craftsmen, and it's really hard to build true Spanish or mission style architecture. So I think this is a good kind of in between happy medium, if you will. I like the proportions that you're doing. I just wonder if maybe the materials are, so you've got a lot of massing changes, but then you also have a lot of material changes. So maybe it's a one or the other. I'm not that sure. I really appreciate the fact that you're expressing that that's a two-story volume in there. I think that actually is a very fun thing for you to be doing to Thompson. I think it could make it feel a lot more active. Yeah, I mean, at a conceptual level, I feel pretty comfortable for this thing to go on to formal, and we get into the details of it, see, you know, how the roof actually works, get a little bit more refinement on the material. I don't think is an unreal request. That's what I have. So with that, what do we, how do you want to handle this? We're asking for comments because we're in a conceptual, correct?
That's correct.
So maybe someone could try to formalize those. Or you want me to do that?
Why don't you sum it up? Yeah. I think we talked about colors, materials. I think your comment on the parapet is probably pretty good. It would make sense to wrap that back a little bit, or at least explore that option.
Okay. Don's getting frustrated. I didn't say that. The comment. Yeah. No, my comment about the parapet is you know, it's not presenting itself as architecture. It's kind of it's facade, I guess. So comments. I think what we heard is obviously there's more refinement.
That's not good.
So much for the city and the county working well together right now.
Ooh, that would have good one.
I have no idea. I heard that. Sorry about that. Thank you so much.
I'm trying. What about the landscape level? Okay. So, I'm going to try to simplify. I'm sure Mike's got his notes too. So, I think there was a conversation about maybe a little bit more material refinement, and you know, looking at there's a tile selected, and you know, is that a tile that you would typically see at this building at this scale? I don't know. And I think there's a general comment about materials and massing. So they may be competing right now, where the building is extremely articulate, and so are the materials. And maybe they're fighting each other. So maybe I don't know how to say that. Maybe someone else has got better words than I do. But massing versus material needs to be explored. I had a comment about the east edge at the sidewalk, and I know that's been kind of a back and forth between the DRC and the applicant in terms of how that actually addresses itself, but it's somewhat of an abrupt it's somewhat of an abrupt edge at the sidewalk, and if that could be detailed or designed in more of a pedestrian edge, because it is turning directly into a residential house that's set back at 30 feet or something, 20 feet. And I'm not saying step back the building. I'm just saying, you know, maybe there's a way to address that with materials or landscaping. I do want to say that I think the massing is appropriate. We know from the zoning it's almost by right in terms of that massing. So, yes, Thompson Boulevard is going to be 2 and 3 stories, and I think it's appropriate. And I think that this architecture's stepping down to the residential scale, which I think is appropriate. Anybody else?
I think you've captured it.
Don, did we miss anything?
Just a second. Oh, I can, the other one that, the last comment, I think was a theme amongst everyone, was simplify the color palette, because it was included in materials, but I think everyone had hit on the actual colors as well. So if you want, I can add that in under material and color refinement.
I think that's good enough, yeah.
Let's see here.
And I do think this is kind of open-ended, and I apologize, but I think there should be a statement about honesty in the massing discussion, about being honest about, you know, architecture and presenting it honestly, as opposed to facade, you know, just straight facade. Like when you see a building, it returns. So should be honest. Only this is architect speak. I'm sorry, but Mike gets it.
Does something like that work?
I think that's good enough. I think that covers the gist of it. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Is that helpful, or did we do good?
I think that works. Yeah.
Okay.
That
So
works. That's good direction. Thank
so can I get a motion of no? What do we need?
a motion?
Yeah, we're just providing comments. There you go. Thank you. The end. Is that really the end? That's it?
That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Although
Thanks,
the meeting's not done yet, just in case you know.
Okay. So we can move on to,
And we're going to, just so you know, we're going to have the next one present from the podium. It seems to be that's where all the control is. So we'll have Jared stand up at the podium to do his presentation.
all right. So I'll just go ahead and introduce it then. So we're on item number 9, which is formal design review of 231-unit multifamily apartment development, including clubhouse, residential amenities, 20,000 square feet of bluff-top public promenade overlooking areas of approximately 11 acres at 567 Sanhone Road along the north side in front of the 101. And I believe Jared is our planner, and I will tell you that everyone else left in the room is speaking on this. So I will also tell you that everyone else speaking in this room is in favor of this. So let's try to get out here by 1 in the morning. And I apologize because I always don't remember everyone's name. So I have applicants in here too. So when I get it wrong, just say applicant, and I'll put it to the side.
Okay.
Hey, Jared.
I'm not sure what was that. Was it on me? Was it for?
It's all you.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for having me here, Chair Klein, or Acting Chair Klein, and members of the DRC. So the project before you tonight is known as the Triangle Site. It's located in the downtown community, in the southeast corner of it. It borders the Midtown community and is also located within the coastal zone. The downtown community is our most intensely developed part of the city, and this project is within the downtown specific plan and has a zoning of T4.3.5. It is a vacant site, approximately 11 acres in size. It stretches from the west side at Ash Street, where the pedestrian bridge is located, to the east at San Juan Road. It also is bordered by the 101 freeway along the south, a slope that rises up to the site. And then on the north side is a separate piece of property with its own development and the railroad. This perspective is looking approximately from Ash Street, above Ash Street, where there is a city-owned informal parking lot that is used by several people accessing the beach. And then this is from that ground level area. And then this is from San Juan Road looking west. And then from the road, it rises up from San Juan Road to the project site. Just for some context from the site itself, there are areas of the site that are very flat. There's a kind of remnant row of eucalyptus trees along the back, and some ice plant along the front between the project site and the freeway. And there are several constraints with this site. That's one of the reasons we haven't seen it developed, even though the previous property owner had been actively looking to get it developed for a number of decades. And it's while it has a beautiful views of the ocean, it also is hindered by its location adjacent to the freeway and in between the railroad. And there isn't a lot of obvious connections, circulation to the project site. Several people, when you talk to them, they're unfamiliar with that there even is a site up there. But it is an extremely important area of the downtown. The downtown specific plan specifically identifies it as Focus Area C, and there are 4 different focus areas within the downtown. And it specifically calls out the city to facilitate the development of these sites. Part of the reason is to strengthen those connections to the beach, but it lays out what the vision is for the property. It's the largest undeveloped area in downtown, and the development of the site should include the provision for public access and public recreational uses such as a bluff-top pedestrian promenade and parking for coastal visitors. The site was part of the downtown specific plan effort in 2007, except the Coastal Commission did not certify the actual subject site. What they did was they kept it at a CTO zoning. So from 2010 to 2014, the city and the property owner partnered up and worked with the Coastal Commission to specifically create zoning for the site that everyone would find acceptable. What this did is it allowed for a mix of uses as opposed to just commercial or tourist-oriented. It allows for residential. And the result was the T4.3.5 Urban General Promenade Parcel Zoning. It specifically talked about how the scale of the neighborhood should be organized through a transect zone as the rest of the downtown specific plan is. and that includes the development form and intensity. The goals are to strengthen the urban character of the downtown. It supports the pedestrian-oriented environment. It prohibits surface parking areas from disrupting frontages, and that the building should define the street as a public space, and pedestrian access and open space arrangements should be part of the development. Using a form-based code component, it consists of regulating plan and urban standards, building types, and frontage types. There's a scale from T1 to T6. This site was put at a transect of T4, so it's urban, but it also is not your downtown core with large buildings everywhere. You could expect to see more residentially scaled buildings, but also would accept commercial types of buildings as well. This is what the zoning now looks like. The T4.3.5 is the most prescriptive zoning that the city has. Its own chapter dedicated to a very specific area, and really lays out exactly what the future development should be. For example, in the western edge of the site, there is a specific portion in front of Ash Street that goes over about 20,000 square feet that cannot have residential. So it's a designated non-residential portion of the site. The project is proposing an open space area there that we can get into more detail as we go forward. Where the building frontage of the new buildings are prescribed to be located along a new driveway type of promenade street stretching from Ash Street to San Juan, with the general alignment laid out in the zoning. There also were view corridors that were intended to extend the physical grid of downtown, the northwest streets from Ash Street, Calorama, Laurel, and Ann Street. And while they knew those corridors wouldn't be made building-free, they did limit the height of the buildings on some of those connections, and the intent was to maintain that view corridor along those streets. So if you're up on Ann Street or Laurel Street, around Main Street or Poli Street, you would see a break in those areas as you're looking towards the ocean. It also laid out where the public promenade was to be located, where breaks in the buildings were to be located, and where pedestrian passages were to be located within the site, so that you would have not a long, monotonous block of buildings, but interesting, active, pedestrian-oriented frontage along that new street. The council saw this project in 2015, provided their comments. The DRC has seen this as a conceptual project as well as 2 times formally. This specific part of the project process after we got through Coastal Commission to change the zoning began in 2015 with a pre-application, and since then has been to DRC 3 times. This will be the 4th time, the 3rd formal. It also went to HPC through its own process to where the HPC confirmed that the existing Joe's Crab Shack / Chart House was not historically significant. As I mentioned, this has been to DRC 3 different times before tonight, and where the DRC provided some comments at the last hearing, where tonight's focus is on how the project addressed those specific comments. The project description itself is 231 luxury apartment units. It has not changed dramatically since the DRC has seen it last. It's in 11 separate buildings on 11 separate nominal lots, so not not legal parcels, but different building sites. Residential amenities include fitness center, yoga room, clubhouse, swimming pool. The public promenade is also part of the project, as well as that 20,000 square foot open area. The project is providing all of its required parking on site, as well as parking, coastal visitor parking along that public promenade street. It does include the demolition of the existing restaurant, which has already been demolished with an emergency coastal permit. There's a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments there. They're using 3 recognized building types: the stacked dwelling, the mansion, and the commercial block. And there's a mixture of garage parking, carport parking, open parking, and visitor parking, with the requirement that a certain percentage to be equipped with electrical vehicle charging stations. And in staff's analysis, we're finding the project consistent with the comprehensive plan and consistent with the T 4.3.5 urban general zoning, with no warrants or exceptions being requested. It's a residential use in a residential area. It's using recognized building types. The parking is being screened from the right-of-way and incorporating the view corridors, and it's providing the promenade. It's consistent with the setbacks for the primary and accessory buildings, and the encroachments of balconies, windows, and eaves are consistent. The architecture is pulling from the local context of other buildings in downtown with the more modern look, and also found in coastal areas. The building profiles are avoiding the monolithic structures and breaks within the massing, and organized within different massings. It also is a variety of different stories: 3 and 4 stories, 2 stories in some places, 1 stories in others, with the varied building massing. The main entrances are accessed directly from the street, and the lot widths are falling between the 75 feet and 100 feet in width. And the frontage types of the multi-level porch, which is unique to this zone, is also consistent with those standards. The parking is being screened from the street, and there are different open space areas within the project site, providing and dispersed throughout the project site, that are providing a number of different opportunities for the residents as well as visiting public. It's providing also the private open space that are required, 150 square feet of usable outdoor space within a minimum dimension of 8 feet. And as a project this size, you might expect it to have. It has a variety of different walls and fences, including the wall along the promenade, along the Caltrans slope there, which is a mixture of a CMU wall with a glass railing. I'm, for the most part, going to let the applicant go over their response to DRC's comments, but they do respond to for example, the comments that the DRC asked for provision to provide 2 total connection points to the property to the north. The applicant has spent a lot of time on this to make a stronger potential connections to that property. What you have here on the left is what the DRC saw the last time. What they did is open it up more, put where the fencing was located, put that now perpendicular to the new street, so they wouldn't be visible, and confirm that in the future that there could be a real connection to those to that property to the north. They had to move some buildings around, and it got very technical. but they were able to do it. Also, there were further development on that open space area, on the 20,000 square foot open space area on the western tip of the site. And they approached the botanical gardens through for a potential partnership with them. And they provided a new sheet in the project plans that highlights the sustainable and green features of the project, as well as the materials, as well as restudying the landscape buffer between the project and the freeway. And as well as in all those areas where you, before the fences seemed a little more prominent, those were pushed back as far as they could go, or made, as the case in the Calorama connection, perpendicular to the road, so they, where before they were visible, now they wouldn't be visible, or they're pushed further back to try to avoid any sort of appearance of a gated community, which would be going against the goals of development in Ventura. Also looking at reducing the number of palm trees and increasing the variety of native trees. They've revised the plant palette. And they've also provided 3D views from the view corridors from Front Street and the other streets, as we talked about before. And then also have further developed the public promenade, and that's one of the public benefits of this project, as well as there is an in lieu fee for a residential project here, which is a very unique situation for anywhere in the city. But for this specific project, if you are to develop residential, it comes with a $1.8 million in lieu fee that goes towards low-cost visitor serving accommodations. And the project is code compliant. The next steps for the project is CEQA compliance. We're expecting an MND that has not been circulated yet. Stormwater compliance, and also following up with the coastal permit to be heard by, we think, the administrative hearing officer. Staff is recommending the Design Review Committee forward an approval recommendation with conditions to the administrative hearing officer for a design review permit as contained within the attached notice of decision. And I can answer any questions, especially about process right now. As far as how the project responded to DRC comments, I would ask to let the applicant go through those so they can flesh those out a little bit more.
Thanks, Jared.
Thank you.
Any questions of staff?
I have some questions. This is my first time looking at this project. And, you've got this road, which is Vista Del Mar, coming off of Seaward, and then ending at Ash Street with the railroad crossing. Is that?
Yes, that is correct.
I was wondering why, because that railroad crossing, obviously, it's going to block emergency vehicles or traffic going through when the train goes by. It's also not the safest place to cross, since you can't see the trains coming from the north.
Maybe I can help a little bit. So this, just because I know this is new to you and it's got to be frustrating. So just to put this in perspective, this project went through a whole, we did a design shred on this whole form-based code overlay. Look at this thing. How long ago, Jared? Help me.
5 years ago?
Yeah.
6
So
years ago?
it went through a whole process there at a community level. And it's also gone through kind of our process as well. That's an existing public right-of-way there. It's an existing at-grade crossing, which we'd love to trade for another at-grade crossing, but that's an existing condition. So all I would tell you, and I would hate to, I don't mean to say your comment's not appreciated, but it's so far down in the process, I guess, is my comment. Without trying to disregard your comment. It's gone through so much. We had those comments 5 years ago, and then 3 years ago, and then last year as well. So, this project. It's gone through a lot of process here today, and maybe even Jeff can speak to that.
Yeah, I was actually going to follow up after Jared finished. He did a good job really framing how we got here, and it's important to re-emphasize that we've been at this a long time. This is an application that basically is delivering what the city said it wanted. when we went through the process of amending the local coastal plan. As the chair or interim chair or vice chair, whatever his title is tonight, said, we actually had, this is a plan that actually complies with what the city wanted. That's a pretty unique thing. Not only did we put zoning on here as part of a larger zoning effort, we particularly put zoning on this particular piece of property and really went through a lengthy process with the Coastal Commission to get that done. So the bones of the plan have been vetted and approved and are relatively inflexible. That's why I think that you saw the applicant try really hard and succeed in having a code compliant project, because they wanted to really honor the effort that the city's put into this project over the last decade or so. I also think the project, I just want to emphasize as well, the amount of times it's been before the DRC over the last couple of years and the applicant's efforts to respond to each and every time it's been to the DRC and provide an adequate response. So I think this has had a robust review, and many of those elements, as you're mentioning, have been in place and are sort of really codified by the city's previous approvals on the site.
Hopefully, that wasn't intended to be negative, I'm sorry, but I think it just needed to be said.
I guess I would just add that my lengthy presentation was for Committee Member Antleman's benefit, as I knew it was his first time, and so I appreciate Member Dunn and Member Klein kind of going through it again. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions of staff?
Does this zoning allow for any commercial or retail in this area at all?
Yes, it always has. Even before we rezoned it, all we did was add more flexibility. So commercial has always been and will always be an allowed use in this area.
Okay.
But it did have to go through a coastal review to have what's in front of us approved.
Yes, because before it didn't allow for residential.
And I should add, the Coastal Commission did not take that decision lightly and put us through quite a bit of economic analysis to make sure that we could prove to the Coastal Commission that commercial on this site was not something we threw out as a bad idea. We tried hard for years, and then we did an economic analysis that shows it was not feasible, and that's why this project is before you today. We actually, in order to get the property rezoned to allow residential and mixed uses, we had to prove to the Coastal Commission that leaving it commercial or visitor serving was going to leave it vacant for many years. And that's how we got the land use changed to the current configuration today. Oh, there always has been, but the economics are not there for that. And really the goal here is to provide sort of, obviously desperately needed housing, maybe more today than 2 weeks ago. And this is really housing to serve the downtown and really try to beef up the support of downtown's existing businesses as well as those that are continuing to grow on Front Street. There's other commercial that this would support as opposed to trying to put it on the site directly.
Any other questions? Thank you, Jared. So we're going to ask the applicant to come on up, and we've got about, I'm going to say 10 or 12 or 15 comment cards. Do you mind, applicant team, if I try to pull you out of this so I'm not being redundant? And I'm going to guess at this, and maybe I can, so just so your applicant team, we've got Colin, right? We've got Colin.
He's out, yeah, yes.
Yeah. And then I think it's Christy or Crystal Irving. Is she not? You're not the applicant then. Okay, I'm sorry. And then Rick. Yep. And then Tom, applicant. Michael Harris.
Applicant.
Yep, I think I'm doing good. And Ronald.
Applicant.
Cool. Did I miss anyone else that was speaking that may have up here that's applicant? Okay, cool. Sorry, guys. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Jared, for your detailed presentation. That was helpful. I'm Michael Harris. I'm the Acquisitions and Entitlements Manager for JDA. I want to first thank city staff and the DRC for getting us here tonight for our third DRC hearing during this time of hardship within the city. I think it's testament to your dedication to the city. I'm going to walk us through what we're going to present here tonight. As it's laid in the agenda, we're going to keep this presentation primarily focused on the comments from the last DRC hearing, but naturally we're here to answer any questions that you may have about the project. I'll run through a brief background of who we are and the site, and then my design team, which consists of Ron Nestor from WHA, Rick Plamus from Sitescapes, and Jack Kiesel from Kiesel Design will walk you through the individual comments one by one and how we approach them. JDA is a family-owned multifamily developer and owner headquartered in San Francisco with team members in Los Angeles and Ventura County. JDA is founded by George Johnson and owned by the Johnson family. George Johnson is the original founder of the Extended Stay America hotel brand. Over the last 25 years, JDA has built award-winning projects, including over 6,500 apartment homes, 550 hotels, and 20 million square feet of commercial. And as a family company, we currently own the site and intend to build it and hold it for the long term. And as long-term owners, we focus on high-quality, durable materials to ensure the project will look as good in year 20 as it does on day 1. And on the screen, you'll see some of the recent awards that we've won. Before we get into the details of the project, I want to first orient you to the site. The site is an 11-acre site that runs along the bluff top from Ash Street to San Juan Road and is part of the downtown specific plan. The city has long viewed this site as the opportunity to complete the connection between the downtown and the beach with the development of a public promenade and a signature residential project. I want to point out that there's 2 points of access to the beach at Ash Street overpass and at the San Juan underpass. The City and Coastal Commission worked through very detailed prescriptive zoning for the site, and this slide highlights some of the restrictions. Jared already covered these, but you'll see the critical items, including the required road alignment, view quarters, and required building frontages in red. And not only does the zoning limit building locations, it limits building heights and building widths. And I'm very happy to say that we've worked extensively with city staff, and we thank them for their efforts, and we've designed a project that's fully compliant with the zoning with no need for warrants or exceptions. We had our second DRC hearing in May of 2017, and we were really excited about all the positive feedback we heard about the project and the architecture, and we're eager to dig into the recommendations you had to improve the project. And I must say that this project is now today a better project because of these recommendations. The DRC wanted us to provide 2 potential connections to the property to the north, as well as to explore a variety of uses. In addition to that, we were instructed to highlight our high-quality materials and sustainable features, as well as include a landscape buffer between the freeway and pedestrian walkway between buildings 4 and 5. And then additionally, we were asked to reduce the visibility of gates from the promenade, reduce the number of palms, increase the number of increase the number of native trees, and include 3D renderings from the view quarters from Front Street. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ron Nestor, who's going to start digging into how we approach these individual comments.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, committee members, for hearing our project tonight, and thank you for your very constructive comments from May. First, I want to say that I and my architectural team at WHA are thrilled to work on this project. It's such an interesting site in its proximity to the downtown, and of course, it's one of the largest oceanfront properties in the region. So we have the unique opportunity to create a beautiful, distinctive oceanside enclave of housing. First, I'm going to give you a little bit of a tour, too. Some of the most important points are the public promenade and several outlook points that have been positioned along the way. At this corner is Building 10, and there's a co-working space with broad terraces, and one terrace overlooks the ocean again. At this knuckle is our community center. We also have a seaside playground in the middle here. We have a mid-block open space here, and we'll talk in greater detail about this northwest recreational corner in a moment. This one? This one. Okay. So first, the comment about providing 2 connection points to the north. At our last DRC hearing in May, DRC requested that staff facilitate a meeting with us and our neighbors to the north that occurred approximately 3 months ago. So from that, what we've done is relocated slightly the Kalorama Street entrance and reorganized it so that it connects directly into the property to the north. Some of the things here include an adjustment of the gates, we'll talk more about that later, and continuation of sidewalks that can cross right into the adjacent property and provide vehicular and pedestrian access. Next. For the second connection, this is at the sloping driveway that runs down to San Juan, and there's an intersection here. So we have a provision for this additional future driveway near Building 6, and so we've allowed space for curb returns, again, to provide pedestrian and vehicular access. So the neighbors in our meeting, they were very thankful for the changes that we made, and they had no further comments. The next DRC comment has to do with the variety of uses. So what we have done is looked at it, and we have doubled the number of home occupation units. Originally, they were located here and here in buildings number 2 and 3, and we've added these additional home occupation units also in building 2 and 3. So all units in building 2 and 3 on the promenade frontage are home occupation units. Another thing that we have done has already been mentioned, but we'll talk more in a moment, is the addition of the botanical garden branch here. And still, like we showed you the last time, we're continuing to provide this corner for a food truck pad and play area and a future bike share location at this point, located at the pedestrian bridge. And then the co-working space, which is approximately 1,600 square feet in Building 10. And now I'm going to turn it over to Michael.
So this portion of the presentation has changed significantly with the tragic events of the last couple of weeks. We were heartbroken when we heard what happened to the Botanical Gardens, but we're looking forward to the rebuilding effort, and we think that a second satellite location is now all the more important. Originally, when we were in discussions with the DRC, they asked us to focus on opportunities to further activate the promenade with a focus on the open space near Ash Street. As visitors and supporters of the Botanical Gardens, we thought that the open space near Ash Street would be the ideal location to highlight this wonderful amenity that exists in the hillsides through the development of a second satellite location on our site. This location would be perfect to take advantage of the heavy pedestrian traffic at Ash Street to promote awareness of the gardens in the hillside. Someone just visited in Ventura may not know about the Botanical Gardens, but they're likely to use the overpass to visit the beach. So we've been working closely with the Ventura Botanical Gardens that have entered a partnership to create a satellite location on our site. When we started to approach this authenticity to the gardens in the hillside was of utmost importance to us, and we were very pleased when we were able to bring Jack Kiesel from Kiesel Design here in Ventura on board to design this amenity.
Thank you, Michael. I'm very happy to be here. In case, for those who don't know, I do have a firm downtown here. I have been working with the Botanic Garden here for a while, doing some of the donor sites and also some of the trail sections, the Fine Boast being one of those, which we're so happy to know that did not burn with the rest of the garden. As you know, this is a bioretention basin, and we have, the plaza's already been talked about before, so I won't go into much detail with that. But we do have it broken down into 3 different Mediterranean zones. Those are the West Australian, the California, and South Africa. For the other ones, you'll have to go up to the main garden to see the Chilean and the Mediterranean basin. With the trail is DG, and that is also to relate to the garden up on top. It's also kind of more informal, meandering, natural around the basin. We also have an access point here that comes down into that area, and that would be like a native carex that could be used for recreational activities, as it were, as also with drainage. We also have a number of like little nodes here where we have some pebble beach seating, which would be referencing the ocean there, proximity to that. We also have a little feature here, right there, that would be an art feature that we could collaborate with the local art community. And that would be, you can see a picture of it right there, what that would look like, and there's the pebble seating. The stairs that go down into the basin, those are like simple wood timber, and that would be kind of relating also to the railroad. We also have, what's very important here is a kiosk, and this would be a new element, and that is directional. It'll be pointing to the garden and also could be used as a kind of rallying point for the community for postings and things of that nature. So we're very excited to have that in here. And then next slide. Yeah, there we go. And then here you can start to see kind of the different colors and textures and patterns that we're trying to create with the different zones. We have like 3 for different trees. We would have platanus, some pines, some of the ones that are still growing across the road, Torrey pines. We would also have, these would be like the native grasses, be acting to kind of really soften the palette. We'd be working closely with the Botanic Garden, as I have been in the past, to bring in interesting collection specimen plants, as along with a lot of the massings that you would see here. We also were looking at bringing in some Guadalupe palm trees, which would be nice also, because that way you get to have open views. Anyway, with that, I'll give it back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jack. Another comment was to explain more about our high-quality materials and sustainable features. So first, we have designed the project to be conscious of our marine environment. We've engaged a corrosive engineer to help us with many of the details. Some of the upgraded materials that we have provided include aluminum balcony railings, aluminum gates, and aluminum fences around the pools to minimize the corrosion. We have artisan luxury panels produced by Hardy Company. That's this green material here. And this is a much thicker fiber cement panel, so it's going to be far longer lasting. We have selected an upgraded Anderson E-Series for windows and doors, including French doors. This is maintenance-free aluminum-clad wood. And we brought previously an example the last time in May. We have upgraded the stucco finish to now a fine sand float finish. And we've upgraded the wire promenade fence and replaced it with a really nice glass fence. So, and there's also many other details that have been developed and have been part of our submittal. Next, Jared showed the slide as well, is about LEED and sustainability. So first, our project is designed to exceed Cal Green standards, and it will exceed California energy standards by 10%. The example here are the different headings that we will cover in LEED. We have engaged Troy Lindquist from Alternative Energy Solutions to be our lead consultant. The project has been already registered with LEED for homes low-rise and LEED for homes mid-rise, and we are targeting a silver designation. One area that I want to point out in particular is this area about renewable energy. What our project proposes is for the recreational building, there will be solar hot water on the roof here that will heat the pool, and on the carports there will be solar PV to provide common area electricity. And we believe that this will be the first market rate LEED project in Ventura. And now to Rick.
Thank you. Rick Bohemus with Sitescapes Landscape Architect, and I want to address one of the comments by Member Dunn, and that was try to get more landscaping along the promenade glass view fence. And it was particularly relating to areas between 4 and 5, building 4 and 5, which is shown here. How we accomplished that was we not only did we want to widen the narrow planter, which is these here, this is the previous site plan. We needed to widen those planters, but also we wanted to elongate them. So you can see how long it is here and how short it was there. We did that by adding another foot to the planters, but almost 40% more linear footage of planter up against the glass wall, or at the base of the block wall of the glass wall. Now this is kind of contradictory to our previous direction, was to try to maximize the paseo, the promenade paving itself. But we still think we've accomplished that. It's a balancing act. But we did that here by showing that it still goes from 12 feet wide to 7 feet wide, but the planting got a lot, 12, like I said, 12 inches wider. It also goes up to about 7 feet wide here. And the next slide. Next slide shows how that really manifests itself. You can see our really nice glass wall here. We have a block wall frontage underneath there. It's like a couple of feet high. But we did a mass planting of an informal nature as much as you can in a long linear planter. The palms and the trees and break up the verticality of it. But we use carex and canyon princess and some other species, a lot of natives.
Okay, comment number 5 had to do with relocation of gates so that they're not so prominently visible from the promenade. So here at Kalorama, the gate used to cross somewhere around here. So the gates have been relocated to be perpendicular to the promenade and set back so that they're no longer visible from the promenade road. And we have still facilitated pedestrian access even into the gates, which provide, the only reason for the gates is to create private parking. The project is not really a gated project, just the parking is. But anyway, the gates, as you can see, are located here perpendicular.
The other comment was number 6, try to reduce the palms along the public promenade visible area and add more natives. So the previous plan, we had 39 Washingtonia robustas along that public promenade road. And we reduced it, we took out 19 or 48% of them. The ones we left, we really wanted at the vehicular entry points here and here, which are also those view corridors. We wanted to make those a wayfinding for the pedestrian and for the vehicular. And we also did the corners of the project to help with scale. And we also added 3 different species of native trees, Catalina ironwood, Catalina cherry, and western redbud. We also were able to transplant some of those great Phoenix canariensis that are on site now. We were able to transplant those, and we're planting areas, strategically placing the best ones on site.
Okay, the next comment has to do with the view simulations from Front Street. So we were asked to provide 3, and so first the notion of these view corridors is to provide a visual extension of the street running through our site. So what we have is an existing photograph here, and this is the same photograph, but superimposed with our new project, and also superimposed with the perimeters of the street right-of-way, which is 60 feet wide. And so you can see that cone of vision through here. So this is the view corridor that we're concerned about. And at this point, what you're seeing at Kalorama is there is no building blocking it. It's just whatever landscape Rick has provided at that point. Same thing for Laurel Street. Here's the existing Laurel Street. And I just want to point out, when you draw that curtain of the view corridors, there's an encroachment here and encroachment here of 2 existing buildings. Those are not new buildings. In the background, again, is the landscape in our site. And then this one is from Ann Street, which is a little more difficult because there's just this huge pile of lumber in the way. So if you were to remove the pile of lumber, what we have figured out is there's an existing 1-story self-storage building here, and there are 4 very large trees, only 2 of which are encroaching into the view corridor. But these trees are not on our site. They will remain. And so we do have building number 8 located behind this self-storage building, but it's only a 2-story building at a lower grade, so it won't be visible in this view.
So again, we want to thank you for your time. As you can tell, we're very excited about this project, and we're pleased with the strong reception we've received from the community, the DVP, the Midtown Council, the Chamber of Commerce, and the City Council. So we're here to answer any questions. We respectfully request that you unanimously approve our project and push it forward expeditiously. Thank you.
Thank you. Great presentation. Questions of the applicant?
Are you providing any electrical vehicle charging stations?
I'm sorry, can I interrupt just a second? There was one thing I forgot to mention, and was that we did errata memo that was distributed tonight. It had 4 pieces of correspondence that we received this past week. Thank you.
Thanks, Jared.
Yes, we're providing 10% of the parking spaces as electrical charging stations.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Thanks, guys. We may get you up here in again. So we got a lot here. Maybe we try not to be redundant, and we don't have really anybody here what looks like speaking against. So we'll just go ahead and start off with Stephanie Caldwell. Welcome again.
Thank you. Again, I know I've spoken here before, and so this is a little redundant, so if you'll excuse me for repeating myself. I did want to say that, the Ventura Chamber of Commerce has long identified the lack of available housing as the single most impediment against economic growth and development here in Ventura. And that was prior to the events of the last 10 days. So obviously, the need for housing is much greater than the supply that we have. And so this project specifically, we believe, is a great solution for our town. Not only does it provide incredible housing for our community, but it also provides that focal point, and it also provides the access for the public from downtown to the beach and the waterfront. When we heard that there was this special partnership between JDA and the Botanical Gardens, we were thrilled to be able to take that gem that we have here in Ventura and bring it down to the beach level. We just thought that that was a phenomenal consideration, and we were really excited at the creativity that they brought forward with that. And we feel that that creativity has been present throughout the entire process of this project. Now more than ever, we do need quality, well-designed housing, and I would urge your unanimous support of this project so that we can allow it to get through as expeditiously as possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie. John Silva. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak before you tonight, and thank you for your late hours. I definitely do want to speak on behalf of supporting this program. I've been a 27-year resident of the city, raised our family here. I also own and run a business here in town. We're a design firm based here. We have an office in Chicago and Reno. I think a little bit of context is helpful given there's so much support for the project, especially here tonight. My perspective might be backed up by a tiny bit of background. I'll be brief. Our company serves clients all over the world and all over the country for sure, from Pepsi to Dole and Anheuser-Busch, Nestle, and we're very proud to have an office here. It's a place I've called home for a long time. One of the challenges that we face is talent and clients, and we're actually trying to help bring clients into this city as much as possible and to foster a business environment here where we can actually work for more companies in our city. The typical profile we work for is a little bit different than what you might normally find in town, but we do work for Patagonia and some for DVP in the city as well. I'm proud to do that. I will say that in so doing, bringing talent here, we've had to move most of our talent to this town, other than myself and a few other privileged ones that have been near the area for some time. And in those cases, 2 of them have moved here from other states and have opted to move to Santa Barbara and commute into Ventura. I will say that I really want to applaud JDA and the entire team for this development. This is inspiring to me. I love this town, as you do. And this would be something that I'd be proud to point candidates to. I'd be proud to point existing staff to. And I think it would be something that really would bring an ounce of hope and optimism to a city that desperately needs it right now. I think it was needed before 10 days ago. It's needed even more so now. And as a business owner and as a privileged incoming chair for the Chamber of Commerce, I would urge you to unanimously support this program.
Thanks,
Thank
John.
you.
Thank you. Mr. Jim DeArkman, did he split? He left. Jim is in support. Actually, I can't read it. Jim was here. Brian Pendleton, did he leave too? He checked support and said support for this project. Support. Joe Cahill, he's still here. Joe has to be here.
Yeah, I'm Joe Cahill, the Executive Director of the Botanic Gardens, and I just wanted to, express my support. The President of our Board of Directors, Barbara Brown, really wanted to be here tonight to speak in support of this, but unfortunately, she was one of the people who lost her home, so she's busy looking for apartments. So if this were just a little further along, it would be helpful to many people. But at the Botanic Gardens, we're really excited about this. We've already started our recovery process from the fire, and it will be a great opportunity to integrate this into that. And in some aspects, or in some respects, portions of this satellite garden will be able to develop faster than some portions of our garden, which is very exciting to us. There's a great opportunity to connect through signage and other means between the Botanic Gardens and this satellite site. And I think, the extension of that is that it will create new pedestrian kind of traffic from this site, from the beach through this site, either up Ash to Poli to the gardens or through Plaza Park, which also has a great botanical history and legacy for Ventura, from Plaza Park up to the Botanic Gardens. There's also a great conservation component to this. There's an opportunity to include a few rare specimens, especially because this area will be gated and will have security. So that brings, an element where we can educate the public about conservation, make more connections to our garden. And this is actually a really, really hot topic and strong topic in the botanical garden world, establishing satellite gardens to engage and draw the public in more. So we're very excited on all fronts to have been asked to be a part of this and to make that connection to the Botanic Gardens. So thank you so much. I hope you support this project.
Thank you, Joe. Randolph Hitton. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Ventura needs more quality housing. I think we all agree on that. The vacancy rate here is below the normal rate of people moving and changing jobs, and that really means we have a shortage. And of course, the Thomas Fire has put a spotlight on that shortage and made it much worse. And at least for some time, some people may have to leave Ventura altogether. And a project like this and others could really help address that. I realize not in an immediate time frame, but as a general proposition. This project is going to create an attractive addition to the city with amenities that not only help the tenants there, but that are open to the public. And one of the most important, I think, is the addition of the Botanical Gardens, which has happened since the last DRC meeting on this project. And so I think that should really be applauded, and I think it's going to be nice, and not to mention the promenade overlooking the ocean. Importantly, this project is fully compliant with the very specific codes that have been designed for this particular parcel by the City and the Coastal Commission. No variances, no warrants, no exceptions.
And I think, based on, and I think the builders have really taken to heart all of your comments from the last meeting as well. And I think the fact that they're going to continue owning and operating it would lead me to believe that they would be even more interested in making it a high-quality project. And for those reasons, I think it should be approved, and I hope that you approve it unanimously tonight so it can move along. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Tiffany Emhoff? Hey, Tiffany.
Hi, good evening. My name is Tiffany Emhoff, and while multiple people have discussed and really emphasized the need for high-quality rental housing in downtown Ventura, I want to kind of give a little bit of a picture of who the people are who are demanding that type of housing. So I've been a property manager in downtown Ventura for 10 years in a newer condominium community. And during that time, the demographics of the people who have wanted to live there have been pretty diverse, but there's been sort of two commonalities. Number one is that they're pretty much all working professionals, and number two, they want to be downtown. So of the people who have lived in our community, lawyers, engineers, teachers, firemen, police officers, naval officers, nurses, as well as doctors. As you know, VCMC has one of the best family medicine residency programs in the country, and we get every single year a whole new group of doctors who are coming here to start their career. Over the time that I've managed this property, I've had 3 different residents who have wanted to live there because they want to be downtown. And the reality is that they want to be downtown, but they also want to live in a high-quality building. And right now, unfortunately, there's a severe lack of that in downtown Ventura. So I think this is a great opportunity to provide housing for working professionals who are already contributing to our community, but also want to be part of living in the downtown area. So please, I ask you to approve of this project tonight so it can continue on in the process. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tiffany. Mr. Rick White. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Rick White. I'm a resident of Ventura for over 30 years, raised my family here, and my children live in Venice now and down in LA and Playa because that's where they're finding the jobs and that's where they're living. I'm here to support this project because of the innovative aspects of this construction type and what you've done in the process with the view corridors and keeping the public space open. So I'll be brief. I would like you to support this, and it's a very exciting project. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rick. Is it Crystal Irving? Is it Crystal? It's Crystal, right?
Christy Irving.
Christy, sorry.
Landscape Development as a licensed QSP and a licensed horticulturist. I'd just like to say I'm for this project because I find that more and more we need more things like this to help protect our oceans. The way that you're implementing the retention basin and planting and keeping all of the runoff of streets from going in the ocean, I appreciate that.
Thanks, Christy. And then, Jennifer with Traveler Cafe. Welcome.
Thank you. My name's Jennifer MacIsaac. I'm a co-owner of Traveler Cafe, which is a business on Front Street. And before I talk about the project, I just want to say that it's ironic because right now I am temporarily staying in a Victorian house on the corner of Ash and Front Street because my house burned down about 8 days ago. And in regards to this project and Front Street, as you know, Front Street is kind of a no man's land because of lack of development for quite a long time. And we are very excited to have this project. We're very excited about the potential it has for drawing the community down to that area and enjoying that area. So we're very supportive of the project. And the last thing I want to say is that when you have a housing shortage and you have the lack of economic development that comes with having a housing shortage. The people that suffer the most are young people and low-income people. And I see it with our staff at our restaurant, who are very dedicated and hardworking people. And I see the obstacles they face to find an affordable place to live and to find a good job to start their career. And I think that needs to change in Ventura. And I think that the work of this committee can affect that change. And it's really important that you realize the obligation you have. And, you know, I think we may have been too restrictive in the past, and I think that needs to change. So, thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. Is it Matthew Krasick? I screwed that one up because you don't look crazy. Sorry.
You would not be the first. 7 letters, 1 vowel. Figure that out. My name is Matthew Grachik, and I am the chairman of the Ventura Chamber Political Action Committee. I moved to Ventura with my family 31 years ago. I also run a software company here in town. I want to echo what Stephanie mentioned, too, about how we see the chamber, how critical the lack of housing is. And as myself, growing businesses in the past because I'm an entrepreneur, that's one of the things that I'm very focused on, having a Ventura that my company won't outgrow as other companies have. And I will tell you, too, at the Political Action Committee, this is the single most important characteristic that we look at when evaluating candidates to support or not support, is their ability to see the need for a project like this, to be able to get through the process in a way that meets the needs of the community without compromise. I frankly can't imagine how this project would not be approved because it's so desperately needed. It's met all of the needs and all the requirements that the city has put forth, the many years of collaboration to kind of get us to this point, and can't imagine why this would not be able to move forward. So with our strongest possible endorsement and support, the Political Action Committee hopes that you approve this unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So that's all the speaker cards. I can't believe we got through that fast. That's all the speaker cards I have. Did I miss anybody? No? Okay. Well then, usually we allow the applicant to rebut, but go for it. Do you mind if I just make a quick statement? And I'm only saying this because you weren't here at the beginning, you weren't here at all. So I kind of feel like I need to put it a little bit in context. And this is going to sound salesman-y, and if I'm getting into Brown Act stuff here, just tell me to shut up. But the process this project has gone through has been pretty onerous, and I've been probably the biggest naysayer in the beginning of this project. I mean, I not ask them. So I just want to put it into perspective because we actually have someone here tonight that really hasn't reviewed the project. And if there's comments about those things, let's talk about them. And there may be history on some of the issues and decisions, and also history on what DRC was asking of the applicant. But what I can tell you is, this applicant probably should write the book on how to work through those processes, because there's been some pretty big hurdles in front of them, and DRC's said go down this street and then said go down that street, and they've gone down both streets and figured out how to find the right direction. So, and I'm just saying that just to put it in perspective in terms of what this project has gone through. So, please, I may not be able to answer them, but
the architectural context.
yes.
I don't particularly find this building very exciting. The context seems a little bit out of, not Ventura, more Santa Monica, maybe more San Diego. Has this been explored previously?
Yeah, and so this is, I don't know, the third probably iteration of that. And what we actually asked them to do, and is this appropriate? Okay, so what we actually asked them to do is to look at the context. And I think that they did that. They actually went out and did some analysis. And then what they ended up coming back to was this idea that they were trying to be honest and authentic in their material selection and their massing. And I think they've achieved that. In fact, I think these are probably some of the most handsome buildings we've got coming out of at this scale. So Yes, it was, and if you, actually, this is, I feel like I'm pitching your project, and that's probably not appropriate, but these are the images that they pulled from. And I will agree, we actually sent them down the road of Irving Gill, you know, looking at this architecture that is mission Spanish modern, right? You know, how Gill was working with that, big planes with punched openings, and I think, you know, the library speaks, you know, our downtown library is kind of a direct interpretation of that. So, yeah, the answer is yes. We beat them pretty hard.
I noticed one of your comments dealt with corrosion and materials.
Yeah.
We addressed some of that, but I'm looking at scuppers and downspouts, I'm looking at roof flashing.
Yeah.
Are we getting stainless steel? Are we getting galvanized metal?
Yeah.
Are we getting rust? We got louvered doors that tend to rust
Yeah.
in our environment. So, you know, what can we do to ensure that we really are going to get quality materials that will last?
So I don't want to answer. I don't want to answer for them. They can answer for themselves. But and then we really probably should be in question mode right now, honestly. But I did hear that they hired a corrosion consultant too. So
I just wanted to add, I think the chair gave more of a sort of a passionate perspective of the history. I also wanted to just frame for the DRC members that were here tonight to respond to the last DRC's 7 comments. That's really sort of the focus of tonight, that the DRC has reviewed this project in great detail, had a few items last time in May that they wanted to follow up on, and tonight's really focused on how they've responded to those 7 items, and I think the applicant did a terrific job responding. It's really up to you to agree if you think they did, but trying to frame the discussion for the DRC is really all the rest of the project's been evaluated, and it came down to those sort of 7 points from last time, and that's the focus of tonight.
And I've actually been in your shoes when I started. You know, I actually stepped into a project that was done, and we were there kind of approving it, and I was really annoying that night, I think, because I had all these questions, and so I think that's appropriate. I don't think we should, you know, dismiss any of your input or comments. So let's just work through it.
Well, would it be appropriate for us, since corrosion was an issue?
Yeah.
They did address it. Can we have a DRC representative to review?
I actually think a project of this scale, we probably should. And just remember, so we're at their 3rd meeting. This is their 3rd meeting, and so it can still come back it will still, because of the project, it'll still come back for confirmation of detail. And are you conditioning a check-in or something, Dave? Yeah.
Okay, this isn't final then.
No.
Okay, which is what I.
Well, in terms of formal DRC, I think it is final. No, this is formal.
Thank you. This would conclude the design portion of the project. It still has to get a coastal permit. So we would be taking the conditions that are attached in your notice of decision tonight, which you can, of course, add anything you would like to. It would be coming back for a confirmation of details, a 50% check-in if that's appropriate. So there are more opportunities to help with those fine details. But yeah, they have a little bit more to go.
Okay.
Yeah, and just there's issue. The road was a huge issue, so the connection to the north was a gigantic issue. I believe that they've responded appropriately to both of those. It's not ideal. This project also had to deal with the coastal overlay and how that road actually works. So, I knew that would probably be one of the first questions you asked, because that was one of the first questions I asked.
Okay.
I would just ask Jared to put the list of the 7 comments from DRC up, just to remind you that I think it would be important for you to respond. Did the applicant adequately respond to those 7 issues raised last time? And maybe that could be a place to get some forward movement tonight.
Yeah.
But on that first item, the applicant mentioned that they met with the adjacent property owner. The city was in that meeting as well, and we had the same conclusion, that the adjacent property owner was satisfied with their plan revisions.
So, were you there at that last meeting?
Yeah, and I think you were. concerned about the connection, which I'm still a little concerned about, only because I understand that it's saying provide the 2 total connection points, and I appreciate all the revisions and the choices that they made from the last. But there is some grading differences, there's some elevation differences in the corridors, and I'm assuming that you're fine with the elevation differences? 'Cause there's some changes along those two corridor connections.
Yeah,
What they're suggesting are permanent walls that are going to go in there that have big grade changes.
Right, what we ask the applicant to do, and as far as we can go on this, we can't require that they actually connect to the adjacent property. We can only require that they don't preclude a future connection. And so what they've done is design their project so that connection could happen. We don't have a project on the other side of the property line. We have an existing sort of industrial building. So at some point, that property will come in for redevelopment, and that's when that connection could happen. But we can't put that burden on this property owner to actually connect to property that's adjacent to them.
So I'll just go through the list.
Please.
So with the continue to explore the variety of uses of the food trucks, I do have a question for the applicant, which is what's the total square footage that you have for the actual access of food trucks in that area? Does anybody have that number? The area that it only looks to me like one food truck is going to fit in there, so I'm kind of curious to know exactly how you're addressing.
No, it was designed for 2. And the shape of that plaza is kind of obtuse angles. That's to allow for the backing up and pulling around, so they don't have to back out onto the street. They can turn around and go straight. So there could be as much as 2 food trucks at the park.
So is it about like a 50 by 50 area?
Well, it has a little backup thing, so it's probably 50 by 60 and has a corner taken off. I don't have exact square footage, but we did the auto turns for it in creating this space.
Okay. All right, thank you. High-quality materials and sustainability, that'll be more or less at the confirmation of details, but I think that quality of materials, they're definitely leaning towards high-quality materials. Study the landscape buffer between the freeway. You said you added 1 extra foot, was that?
Well, really what we did is we extended the existing planters, which
lengthwise?
It might have been 25 feet long, now they're 45 feet long, and they got about a foot wider.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Yeah, my concern about that mainly was a landscape buffer for noise and dust pollution that was going to come from the freeway, and that was why I even brought that up. I was a little concerned about that. Which brings up another suggestion, the area that you have for the children's play area. I noticed that you just have a vertical picket fence in there, and I'm wondering if perhaps that could also be a glass fence to help sound and maybe just...
Well, that would be 2 glass walls, because the one along the promenade's 400 and something feet long, or I forget.
Right.
But
I'm only saying that because there's a lot of studies that show that children's development adjacent to freeways can be hindered by pollution, and I just want to bring that up.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. So any effort that you can
sure.
make, and I don't want to block your views by bringing in a lot more plant material, because I recognize the view corridor is the views from the buildings are very important, but I just want to recognize that that specific area where children are planning on playing outside and the horizontal distance between that and the freeway, I think
So I'm just to clarify, you're asking for it's a 4-foot fence?
I think it's a 6-foot.
it's a
vertical
5-foot
picket.
fence,
Is it?
but we are trying to, pierce through it and make it look, transparent,
Seamless.
because we have
Just because
plants
I'm
on
going to
both
take
sides.
I'm going to take notes. I'm going to try to sum this up. So just so I'm clear, you're asking for a 5-foot glass wall, and the rationale is for freeway contaminants.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And sound, just in that area. Study landscape. Gates should not be visible from frontage road. So I think it's great that you pulled the gates back. I think my only area, the challenge is that connecting to the downtown area and providing a site that has an urban ambiance, let's say. And one of the things to me that pull away from that is the perimeter fence around the park that you have on the north side, And I'm wondering if that's just for security reasons that you have that fencing around that park area? Is there any chance that that could be left open, or the fence could be a little lower? I think one of the concerns I have is that the amount of fencing and walls that are around the perimeter, I'm a little concerned visually as this project gets developed that it's going to have an enclosing feel to it. And I think in your effort to try to connect back to the city from a pedestrian standpoint, having more open spaces, especially on that particular side, I think having less fencing, the only place that I can see for the opportunity for less fencing without being a security risk, because I know that's what your concern is around the buildings, is in that park area.
And maybe one of the questions is, because that's the botanical gardens, actually, the fence goes through the planting through there. So I guess maybe one of the questions is how tall is the planting on either side of that fence at that edge?
Well, there's another issue on that particular site, which is that this, on the two back sides of it, that the grade drops anywhere from like 3 to 10 feet in this area. It really is a basin on those sides, which is why, especially on the back sides, adding fences on top of that just feels like a barrier to me in an urban environment. And that's why I keep bringing up the urban environment. Part of it is to try and incorporate those back into, accessing to the city, because as the people that you've brought up that are interested in this project, and a lot of the things and reviews I've seen of younger people who do like to live in these types of facilities is the connection to the city, the connection to restaurants and the pedestrian access to it, so they don't have to get in their cars is important. And I think that visual element is key.
Sure. And it's something that we studied, and we shared some of those same concerns. There's just a couple of different things we were trying to balance.
Mm-hmm.
So on the security side is, one, we're going to have the botanical gardens. And as Joe said from the botanical gardens, there's the potential to have some pretty protected species here, or high-value species. So the way we've approached this is, this botanical gardens is going to be open during the day, similar to how the gardens in the hills is open, and it's going to be managed by our staff. So during daylight hours, the gates are open, but at night for security, we need that ability to control access there. And then the additional thing is the depressed area is for stormwater treatment, and it's a requirement because in a large once-in-a-while storm event, we have to have the ability to gate that area to protect the public. So it's a balance of these conflicting issues, but I think Rick's worked real hard to try to keep that space open and the food truck area, it's a large sliding gate, so that we can try to maximize the openness of that within reason of trying to balance security.
And on the security side, we got the feedback from the police department about how challenging it is because there is a homeless population in the area, that they're concerned about if you have an open space like that it's going to be an area where they're having to come every night because they're staying out in that open space.
Yeah, well, that can be.
I would just add, that was part of the parks manager and the police, as we do all of our interdepartmental reviews of all projects. We always have the police and the parks manager giving their feedback and the encouragement of taking the DRC's direction to activate the space, which was early direction a year or more ago. Mm-hmm. We had to funnel that through the police and understand, are we creating areas where we're going to have more police service needs? How can we accommodate this during the daytime, which is really where you want to activate the space, maintain the continuity all the way through the site, which is still not gated at all, so that still is there. But it really was the police direction to ensure that we could make sure in the evening this would not be a transient and a service call area.
That's a good idea, because having spent 3 years in the building right adjacent to that is a homeless encampment behind that warehouse. And then you've got a block wall, and then you've got, looks like 5 feet behind your garages. You're not going to have any sunlight back there, and that's just going to also be a great place for them to camp out. So there are issues, and I hope you explore all of them. And there's no simple solution either to these issues.
Maybe keep going the list.
Liz?
List.
Where's the list? Bring out the list.
Which way was it?
Thanks, Jared. Palms.
Palms. So reduce the number of palms to increase the variety of native material. Yeah, you did a lovely job on that. That's terrific. And then provide 3D views of view corridors, which you provided.
So maybe let's just take them one by one and just go through them so we can kind of go through this. So probably 2 total connection points. So any discussion on that? I mean, it sounds like you had some concerns about the grading, but.
I mean, yeah, I'm sort of late in the game here, but it's just, I agree, it's a very challenging site, and I know that's been reworked a number of times. And in my head, I'm just, from a big picture standpoint, I just want to make sure that as this project is developed, it doesn't look like a suburban development inside an urban city, and that's my biggest concern about it. So those connections, those pedestrian connections, which tend to not have fencing in them, so to speak, are the challenges that these applicants
So the
have.
2 connections that we have do not have fencing in them. They are streets with sidewalks, and they happen to hit a fence.
Yeah.
But when the neighbor to the north, but the wall goes away. The neighbor to the north develops, the wall goes away, and the street goes through. That's the intention. That's what we talked about 3 or 4 times. So this one was given. They were doing that. Jared, can you skip to the other one?
Yeah, the other one was a little more important.
Yeah, and so just so we're clear, is the gate used to be here?
Yeah.
And you couldn't get in past this point. Well, I think what their approach was to put 2 gates back in here, and the sidewalks actually go and then extend, and then at which point this thing develops, it connects through as a street. And I mean, it's like any other greenfield development, which is not the greenfield, but they would have to match grade, right? They would have to accept. They're the first on the field, so they have to accept that. But if the applicant, or not applicant, if the owner to the north was part of that conversation, which it sounds like it is, if you look at the overall scale of this, I think it's very appropriate to have that block dimension here and at the other point. I think it creates that connectivity. And it's in the property to the north's benefit to have that, which is what the DRC was fighting for. And it was tough. I know it was tough for them to do that. And, they had to move some stuff around. So I applaud the effort, and I think that's exactly what it should be. That's a street. There's nothing parking lot about that. That's a street to me. Parkway, sidewalk, street, and curb.
Okay.
List. Can we talk about this real quick?
Yeah.
Okay, so I just want to, I don't even think this is on the list. I want to applaud this effort. And so this is the idea of providing a live-work opportunity. It's not has to be, but it's a live-work opportunity. My only comment would be maybe take it to the next step in terms of how does your facility allow for someone to hang a shingle? Or actually make that truly what it could be. If I, have a little law office, right, and to be able to hang a shingle, and all of a sudden that becomes, a little mini commercial area, not commercial, but a little mini downtown, if you will, a little center. So maybe there's some thoughts about how that could happen, and as it moves forward with the city, how that actually could be approvable. So I think that's cool.
Professional office space?
Well, it's a, you guys calling it, what are you guys calling it?
It's a home occupation.
Home occupation. It's a live work.
Okay.
So what a great thing to be able to have people, there at day, watching that street. So it'd be great. So high five to that. Sure. Can we get back to the list?
Do you like the list better?
Well, you're doing such a good job going back and forth. Continue to, so the discussion on the food truck that kind of spun into the park. My comment about that is I applaud I applaud any time that there's a hurdle in front of a project and you turn it on its ear and make it a positive. And I think that's what you've done. You said, oh man, we've got this detention basin. So, and the DRC's, barking about it being a detention basin. So one, you went and put a food truck in. That's easy. Everyone does that. But then you go and get Joe and you say, what we talked about is you got to program this. You got to tell us what you're going to do in this big space. So they go get a user for that. I mean, what a creative approach. And that's the exact place for this. I think what you've created is you've created an urban plaza, actually an urban plaza at that very important kind of pinch point to the pedestrian connection. And then when we cap our freeway, it'll be perfect. Right, Jeff?
Get that big Animal Crossing. Yeah.
So I guess my point is I think their approach for it is so dead on, my opinion.
Okay.
Materials, sustainable. Comments? You good with that? Jeff's good with it. Okay, so let's get real specific about your landscape buffer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what we had talked about, or maybe what I was thinking it was, and maybe what you think were two different things, but last time we saw it was kind of more of a wall, and then the landscaping was kind of on the other side of the sidewalk. Mm-hmm. And I think what you're achieving now is a series of pockets, mm-hmm. and also you've created this kind of meandering, without it being a meandering path, you've kind of created this meandering path that has large landscape piece, small landscape piece, no landscape piece. I mean, you want to be able to walk up to that edge and look over too. So I think by giving that extra foot, they were reacting because we said we wanted a big promenade, so it was like a 12-foot freeway. Well, that's a bad term, but a 12-foot, just.
Yeah. No, I think they responded.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Do you agree?
Yes.
Okay. Gates, you kind of hit on that. We're good.
Yep.
And then the last two we were good too.
Yeah.
So if we were to move forward with conditions of 50% check-in, and are those already?
And you do in your packet on it's page 147 on the bottom page numbering. 24 is a 50% check-in, and it lists all the items, and then condition 25 is the full confirmation of details. So I do think you have the structure for all those details to come back for the DRC's review. You can augment them if you so like, but they are listed out there for you.
So one last thing. So I judge projects by if I did them, would I be proud of them? And I think Mr. Silva talked about this project in terms of being proud, and I would be proud to do this project. So that's how I'm judging it on. I think in terms of the quality of the materials, the level of not ownership, but just stepping up to the plate in terms of sustainability, dealing with this as an urban project in a very suburban context, truthfully. I mean, it really is a suburban kind of, you got a property line, you could have a wall there. I think it actually answers the questions, pretty well. So for that, I'm going to be supporting it tonight. Do we have a motion up one way or the other?
Jared, what do you want us to do? I mean, is that list part of the motion, or?
That is the motion that staff is recommending to forward and approve recommendation to the administrative hearing officer for the coastal permit. This approval will be incorporated into that.
Comments, put them out there.
The planning manager, Ward, was correct in saying that you already have a pretty thorough structure within the notice of decision that have a lot of already kind of placeholder items that would be taken care of through the confirmation and details. So anything you want to add to that is more than welcome to.
And I would suggest we do. I think you may have a comment, and I have a couple minor comments that we should be throwing out now so that when it comes back to confirmation and detail, they can fold those in. So, please.
I mean, it just follows up on the urban aspect of this and appreciating the pedestrian nature of the downtown area, Front Street, attaching this project to Front Street and making sure that the focus is on the urban nature, not the suburban nature, which tends to segregate itself physically from the surrounding environment. So as the project goes along, I know there's a lot of walls and fences, but again, as we get into the detail part of it, I just want to make sure that the approach is thoughtfully moved forward in an effort to recognize that you're smack in the middle of a city.
I think the only way you're going to get something like that is to build a bridge across the railroad tracks at this point in time.
I love the
most
idea of a
roads-
freeway park. I'm from Seattle. The only other thing that my comment is, and I don't know what the rest of the board or future board people will say, but I was never a fan of the that really modern light fixture along the promenade. Maybe explore other designs for that light fixture. Other than that, I'm fine.
Any comments that they can take away that you'd want to see come back at confirmation of detail, at a detail level maybe?
Well, I think I've already said that. Having worked in corrosive environments, I think the details are really critical, especially with any type of flashing or gutters, downspouts, collectors. I prefer to see things internal. I know a lot of people don't like to run their downspouts internally, but when you put things external, like you've shown on your plans, there's an opportunity for people to climb up them and go into windows as well as for them to corrode. So I know you've got a lot of lateral runs on your downspouts as well, and I think that detracts from your building as well.
I think that first bullet point, I think she was talking about as it pertains to walls.
Okay,
correct?
I was just
No,
going
no,
back on
I'm
the
sorry.
question.
I'm just talking about Jared. I think is typing. Did it not? Weren't you talking about?
Yes, as it pertains to the segregation, the actual physical separation. Walls and fences.
So I just want to put them out there like 5 little nitpicky, super minor nitpicky things, like I said, and I don't know how best to communicate them, but you don't have sheets, Jared, do you? Don't worry about it. So building 10 is your I think that's your big building. Is that building 10? Yes. Building 10, minor, but we were talking with architect Mr. Faulkner about parapets returning and being, that building's beautiful and it's got that kind of tower thing, and I don't know how it resolves itself here. It may be tower-like, I can't really tell, but if it's not, maybe it slides over the top. I don't know, so it's just a comment. And then a really good example of that is what you did on the 2-story pool house building, where that second floor actually slides over the top of that. That's like perfect. I mean, the marriage of those two. Minor. I'm going to fly through these real quick. And then I just want to echo, and we talked about the last 2 meetings, I totally agree. It sounds like you have a corrosion consultant. That's what you're going to need. Your metal railing, if it's not aluminum, will be corroded in 2 months. It will be pitted. So if it's aluminum, that's great. And I also think you got to think about, and you guys probably already do this because you hold so many properties, but how are you maintaining that when it does? Whether it's demountable or replaceable or however that works. Because right now it just says your railing detail says exterior grade top rail, so not too sure what that is. At confirmation detail, I think that will definitely be something we'll be asking you about. That's really it, honestly. Oh, last one. You've got this very beautiful, the proportions of your big buildings, and then you've got a 2-story building sits. I mean, it's perfect. And you've got these really gorgeous parapet caps and second floor cap pieces. And when I look at the detail, the parapet details, it looks like just kind of standard flashing. And I'm wondering if that's not still standard flashing, but it's like held off or something, so you get a little shadow line. Maybe that's not your intention, but your elevations and your renderings kind of look like there's something there. Not asking for a metal or concrete cap up there, but maybe the flashing can kind of allude to that and give you a little shadow drop there. Simple detail.
I'm not sure how to word that.
What's that? So all I would say is maybe revise parapet detail to provide architectural speak relief study parapet detail to provide relief. You get it. He gets it. And Jack's garden design is gorgeous. It's gorgeous. So thanks for doing that. So with that, I think we have comments. I think we have conditions. Anyone want to make a motion?
So I'll make a motion that we continue this project.
Hearing officer.
I recommend, staff recommendation. Staff recommends that the Design Review Committee forward with the conditions as listed by Jared to the Administrative Hearing Office for design review.
I'll second that.
Can we get a roll call, please?
Member Andelman?
Yes.
Member Dunn?
Yes.
Acting Chair Klein?
You can't just say chair?
No.
Yes. Thank you. Great project. Thank you very much. So item number 10 is obviously continued to the 20.
We can ask one of the other members to continue it to the 20th. Make a motion for item to be continued to December 20th.
I'll make a motion. Oh, you want me to? You
Just
need a
the
motion?
two of you.
Continue it?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Well, I'll make a motion to continue.
I have to recuse myself. That's
Right.
why he's saying that.
So motion to
continue this to the
continue.
20th?
Okay, is there a second to that?
Are you going to second that?
I'll second.
All in favor, say yes. Okay, thank you.
So staff communications, you already did it? So with that, we're adjourned. Thank you. Great job, everyone.